I thought you were somebody else. Anyhow, good about me. Sure. I got rheumatoid arthritis. My hand is working and only need a staple things.
Like someone outside.
Oh, is Ty gonna finally get to present as Elia?
I
know.
Pretty far down the list. I know. Let's put it after Comp and Clash, shall we?
You should make me the editor.
I can see his eyes lasering me right now.
I don't want to be. Okay. Do you know what Bob did you say?
I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the May 20th, 2025 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Excuse me, members of the audience. Dave, we need you quiet. Thank you. Councilor Duquesne will offer the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Ukuratsum Band and the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor the first stewards of the Rogue Valley and the lands we honor and depend on, tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed, include the original, past, and present indigenous inhabitants of the Shasta, Tequilma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Wakaka, where the Crow lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. And Councilor Dale will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Duquesne.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Thank you. We are to mayor's announcements. The first one is that if you have come here this evening to speak to the council on an agenda item or something else that is on your mind, please make sure that you fill out a speaker request form. They are in the tray at the top of the wooden space there. And when you fill it out, please make sure that you indicate whether you are here to speak to us on an agenda item or whether you are here to speak to us about something that is not on the agenda. If the latter, if it is something that's not on the agenda, please make sure that you indicate that you are here for public forum. Also, please make sure that Alyssa, our recorder, has your form before we get to that agenda item so that we can appropriately time the folks and get everybody up when they are supposed to be during the meeting. We have two proclamations this evening. The first is in honor of Bike Month 2025. Whereas National Bike Month was established in May 1956 and is sponsored by the League of American Bicyclists, today millions of Americans engage in bicycling as an affordable, environmentally sound transportation, physical exercise, and wholesome family recreation. And whereas the bicycle is an excellent way for people of all ages and abilities to make short in-town trips while enjoying our community's scenic beauty. And whereas creating a community where bicycling is a practical, safe, and efficient way to make short in-town trips from anywhere to everywhere will improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, improve traffic safety, reduce congestion, diminish the city's contribution to climate change, free up parking, and reduce wear and tear on our streets. And whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Ashland and our visitors will experience the joys of bicycling through educational programs, a multi-day film festival, commuting events, mountain bike races, free music events, jump clinics, repair and bicycle maintenance training, in-town bike riding events, or by simply getting out and going for a ride. And whereas the City of Ashland remains committed to ensuring that bicycling is safe for people of all ages and abilities, now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, Oregon, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 as Bike Month and ask our residents to support bicycling, participate in the planned events, and share the road safely with all bicyclists. And the second proclamation is a proclamation in honor of Building Safety Month 2025. Whereas the City of Ashland recognizes that our health, strength, and resilience depend on the safety and essential role our homes, buildings, and infrastructure play in everyday life and when disasters strike. And whereas the resilience of our built environment is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes, and whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us of safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies as they work to protect lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, Oregon, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 as Building Safety Month. Accordingly, I encourage our citizens to consider what each of us can do to improve building safety in our homes and businesses. In Ashland, we are better together. Thank you. Yes.
I would just like to take a second to thank the City of Ashland for sponsoring this last weekend's bike festival. There were mountain bike races, there was parties in the streets, there was the bike film fest, there was kids events. It was just really amazing to see the town alive with bicycles and bicycle energy, and the races were super fun for all ages, little kids, older kids like myself. It was just great, and I know that the new event grant helped pay for it, so we'd like to do it again next year and crank it up a notch or two. But thank you, City of Ashland. It was a lot of fun.
Great, thank you. So we are now to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? No. Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, I move approval of the study session and business meeting minutes of May 5th and May 6th.
Is there a second? I'll second that. Okay, roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Mayor, if I may.
So we are to the consent agenda, but we do have someone who has asked to speak to us. And it's not clear to me how many of these consent agenda items would need to be pulled to do that. So what I would like to do is simply invite you up now to speak to those issues. If it works out. Does that work for you, Lita? Yes. So Lita, you'll have 3 minutes, and you'll speak to us from the microphone. At 20 seconds, it will give you a signal, and then you'll have 20 more seconds before it starts to do the chiming to let you know that you're done.
Okay. I apologize that I didn't write it up the way I normally do. I've got notes all over the place. My big concern is that here we are, the CBC has met and, as far as I know, approved the budget. And now, after that, we have a consent agenda that has 41 pages of increased fees. And it also has proposed salary raises. And my question to you then, I know you're not going to answer it here, but my question is this in the budget? And if so, where the heck is it?
That's it. Thank you. So would any counselor like to remove any of the consent agenda items? Counselor Dale.
I'd like to remove item E, please.
Item E, you said?
That's correct, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes. Any others? Okay.
No, I agree.
So the floor is open for a motion regarding the remaining items on the consent agenda. Counselor Hanson?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, letters A through D, as is.
Second?
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Okay, we will take up letter E. Counselor Dale?
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot there in E. I specifically just want to speak to one of the miscellaneous fees. In general, I think I'd like to say, relative to the fees document, this is something that has just always been presented kind of near the end of the fiscal year. I think we're there again, and that's understandable for this year. It occurs to me that maybe in future years that we would probably need to maybe back that out and maybe discuss this within 90 days or so prior to the end of a fiscal year so that we can better understand the fees. That said, I do want to make one change to the miscellaneous, and Mayor, I'd have to defer to you if it would be a motion to be able to make a change within one of the documents, the exhibit.
So this is maybe a question to our city attorney. How would that structure work?
Not knowing the resolution and the extent, he could just move to amend by line.
One of the
Yeah.
documents in there, yeah. Okay.
Move to approve with this correction?
That is correct, and I have it prepared if I may. Yeah,
Yes.
okay, thank you. I move to modify page 39, subsection entitled Field Usage in the section Field Usage and Cahier Seating of the City of Ashland FY26 miscellaneous fees and charges that is effective July 1st, 2025, and is referenced as Exhibit A in Resolution 2025-09 as follows. Delete the line per hour per field charge, add an additional subsection entitled Facility Usage, and add the following lines under the subsection Facility Usage. 1 day per week per season, each organization, $300 for 2025-2026. 2 days per week per season, each organization, $450 for 2025-2026. 3 to 4 days per week per season, each organization, $600 for 2025-26. And 5 to 7 days per week per season, each organization, $750 for 2025-2026.
I'll second that.
Counselor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yep, I've worked with local sports organizations in multiple reasons for going on 27 years now. I know we've had multiple organizations come and speak. I reached out to directors all across, I think I'm at 3 states and counting, with different sports, including football, soccer, baseball, softball, lacrosse, and others. And these organizations have utilized fields and facilities that are owned and managed by cities, counties, special districts, and school districts. And other than ad hoc, one-time, similar uses for other venues, there was never an hourly rate. All of them indicated that having some sort of predetermined rate, be it a fixed number of days per week per season, or a fee per player per season, or some other calculation that is agreed upon in advance, is critical to the success of these organizations by being able to properly plan, predict, budget, and set expectations. I won't continue on with my reasonings. I think it's clear. I just think that we had this discussion, which I really appreciate, was a robust discussion with Council and Parks Commission. I appreciate that effort and agree with a lot of our colleagues on the commission. What I did mention at that meeting was that I'm looking very much forward to our park director's PROS plan and the strategic vision. I just think we're getting the cart a little before the horse. These fees haven't changed in years. We indirectly gave direction for a potential parks fee if approved by this body, which would right-size everything through at least the next 6 to 9 months. And so therefore, I just would like to provide our local organizations with the same amount of predictability that we're affording to organizations within the city. Thank you.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, just briefly, I was not aware of doing that research, and that's certainly helpful information for me. It's really going back to process, and I think that this was kind of dumped on these organizations very quickly. And I appreciate what Councillor Dale brought up before making the motion about let's start getting this out 6 months ahead of time, so that way the organizations, the groups that are affected by this have the time to participate, have discussion. We all have time to deliberate. The Parks Commission in this case has time to deliberate. And so I think that this is a really good stopgap to kind of, no, let's stabilize this, let's have the predictability, and then fix the process going forward so that there is more time for that discussion. So happy to second.
Yes, and I have some additional information as well. But Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I mean, it's new information to me. I just searched my email and I don't see anything from Councillor Dale giving us a heads up on this. I know that this went to the Parks Commission, director presented it to Parks Commission, and then they came back and had another meeting and revised the fees. So this has been in discussion with Parks. And I'm just curious what kind of communications, I don't see any in my email, just what kind of communications you've had with Parks, or whether this is something that he's bringing forth on his own.
We just need to be careful of crosstalk. So if you would like to answer that question, you certainly may.
Yeah, speaking, the reason I did not send it to council is because I legally can't relative to public meeting law. I have spoken with multiple commissioners, though, and expressed and had robust dialogue. It was, I will keep those conversations between us, but it is not for a lack of having multiple conversations with multiple commissioners, as well as the Parks Director.
So I'd like to add a little bit of information. I reached out to Commissioner Chair Bachman to find out, to ask some questions about this, because we've received a lot of messages of concern about the changes in fees, and I know that they've taken it up as a second element. What he told me is one of the elements that simply isn't in the fee schedule, because that's not where you could put something like this, is that they have committed to working with the local sports organizations to figure out an in-kind contribution that could work towards those field fees for the sports organizations that do work at the fields to help maintain them, and that they're not done yet in terms of this particular fee, and that's what that next step looks like. It's not done yet, but that was the information that he shared with me. Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks. I was scrambling through to get the page number, so I just like to ask Councillor Dale to repeat the 4 different fees that you're suggesting, the per 1 day per week, 2 days per week, 3 and 4.
Sure, if I may, Mayor?
Yes.
Sure. I will repeat them there, they just for clarity, but I will go through them as they are identical to what's in there now with a 200% increase.
Okay.
So they are 1 day per week per season, each organization, $300 for 2025-26, and I'll just be brief. 2 days, $450, 3 to 4 days, $600, 5 to 7 days, $750. I will say that the organizations did say up to 1,000 that they were willing to. They were just looking for a fixed. And to the mayor's point, if I may add, that I forgot to mention during my research with others is a lot of organizations have specific contracts that they have where they negotiate with a given group and they say, okay, this is what we're going to, so it's not a default in a miscellaneous document that is just overall that I would, it's not our call for policy relative to the Parks Commission, but I would encourage them to maybe think about approaching each organization. Most recreation divisions have individual contracts with each organization. I know this because I've been doing it for years. Certain group has one, another group has another, and it's almost an individual case basis. And I think that would be, honestly, that would be the most equitable way other than just a flat fee that's unpredictable. So my intent is not to surprise or anything. It's other to add predictability with the hope that this can be amended at any time throughout our fiscal year. But this is actually giving the Parks Department more money than is what is in there right now. Plus a stopgap. It is just designed to be able to provide predictability for the next 12 months while we come up with a strategic plan and better ways to do things, as dictated by the commission through the Parks Director.
Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Councillor Dale for taking the time to read this and dissect it and make sense of it that's doable and workable for our community. I support this, and I do not support the 5% tax that our residents will be burdened with when you compound it with everything else. However, this sits on the table in front of us. It's more equitable across the board, and so I do support this motion.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you. I too wanted to pull item E from the consent agenda. My colleague got to it before me, but that's okay. My question around this is, I was looking at, I think it's page 37, and I was just looking at the hike. My question, one of them is, first off, I don't know why this type of item was even placed on the consent agenda, because it has so much detail in it and so much financial impact on the community that I don't think that this should ever be on the consent agenda. But looking at Parks and Recs, when it comes times to the fees for the community center.
Councillor Duquesne, the council just approved that fee,
for the community.
the fee schedule for the entire fee schedule with the changes that Councillor Dale indicated for
Point of order.
Yes.
I believe that was just an amendment, not a motion to finalize the document.
Councillor Dale?
It was, and I would defer to the city attorney. My motion was to amend an exhibit in that consent agenda item.
And not the whole
I don't
thing.
know if that was, my intention was, I mean, I'm going to defer to your attorney ruling. I was
I have
just
to look back
motioning.
at what the motion was, but I
The
believe.
motion was to modify an exhibit A. That was
Okay, not
one
to
of-
approve as amended, or?
Not to approve the consent agenda
just my-
as amended, but just to approve wording in an exhibit. So
Okay.
that's-
Okay.
So go ahead, Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you, Councillor Bloom. I appreciate your interjection there. So my question is, how did we get to the conclusion the cost for the Grove, the Community Center and Pioneer Hall? It's very interesting to me. Previously, it was $105, and now it is per hour, $160 on the weekend in the community center and $120 on the weekend in Pioneer Hall, plus a $100 non-refundable cleaning fee. How is that determined?
So when looking at the building, we're looking to recover the cost for cleaning it, having the utilities on, and for the public using it. So if you remember, this building hasn't been in play for, 5+ years. So, we need to be able to recoup our cost on that building for its usage. So it is purely for community use.
Well, my question in that, and I saw it was a $25 fee to have the electricity on for 4 hours, and I understand cost recovery. However, to go from 105 to 160 and 120 per hour, I feel that is way beyond. The Grove was built for the community, and then the Grove was used for parks. It's a community center. I look at the Japanese garden, which I feel like is a very reasonable fee for someone who wants to come in and have a lavish wedding and that type of event. This is a community center. So we are stuck at this rate that has been proposed that somebody came up with. Am I understanding that right?
So this is what we've calculated for cost recovery of operating these buildings moving forward.
And how did we get this? Did we look at any study? How did we get this amount?
So I'll have Rocky come up here since Parks is managing it. But, to have the building heated and the electricity on and to keep the building clean and pest control, those are all costs. Staff aren't in this building on a regular basis, so it is there for the community to rent and use, but there is a cost associated with that.
I understand the costs associated, and I appreciate that, and I feel like the community will be very excited when the doors open. So it will be open and it will be in use. But if you can explain that, how you got to this dollar amount, I'd appreciate it.
For the record, Rocky Houston, Parks Director, Ashland Parks and Recreation. Is this in regards to the cleaning fee?
It's
Or the hourly rate?
it's in regards to the rental. I understand a cleaning fee. Most cleaning fees are refundable when people leave and they leave it the way it was when they got there, you get your $100 back. That's the norm. I don't understand how you could go from $105 to $160 per hour or $120 per hour for the Pioneer Hall.
It is the size of the building and the room. It has been out of utilization for several years. When we looked at other areas and different rates for the rooms and things provided, that was our analysis. This, additionally, we were challenged to not do business as usual and to continue to look at cost recovery. And so that is part of our fee review, was to look to bring in an alignment with other jurisdictions and look at cost recovery. We did not hire an additional FTE to help manage these positions, and as such, we have contracted services we'll be doing to meet some of that. That's why the cleaning fee is not refundable, is because I will have a fee to clean that to bring it back to standard, whether that's with our own staff or our current intent is to hire a service to do that as it is rented.
Well, for one, I think that these are astronomical fees to go from 0 to 100 when we have people who love the community center and I know would cherish it and take care of it once it's open. Like I said earlier, I don't even know how this got on the consent agenda, this whole package. So I will not be supporting that, nor would, and when I looked at the first part of the $58 for every 15 minutes for a public record, thank you, Mr. Houston, but when I looked at the $58 for every 15 minutes for a resident to request a public record, I thought that was ridiculous too, and I don't know where that price came from. And I don't know what constitutes, before I leave, Mayor, thank you, what constitutes public record?
The records that the city has.
So any record that the city has after we have this beautiful website, I can't go to the search bar and type in an ordinance or?
Yeah, you can still get that. So if you do the search yourself, that's free. The records fee comes from a blended rate. So we used to charge per person. So like if Scott were looking for a record, you would be charged his hourly rate. But it's more equitable to have a blended rate. So it is easier.
I went, before I got here, I went and I typed in the search bar, and I've done it before, doesn't come up. So I think that that's something that we should definitely look at before we burden the people with $58 for 15 minutes of search.
Yeah, so if you go under the city recorders page, there's archive city records. That'll take you to Laserfish, which is our records repository. And then you can pick between resolutions, ordinance, city documents, contracts, and agendas.
Well, I think that that should be very visible on the website so that it wouldn't take staff time and it wouldn't take $58 of 15 minutes from our constituents.
Can I
would like
add
to see
to
that
that?
on there.
We only charge if it takes more than 15 to 20 minutes, which is honestly very rare.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, Alyssa, and I would like to see what you just mentioned, City Manager, more visible on the website and more accessible to our constituents. Thank you.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, I have a question for Rocky as well. I know he just walked out of the room. I hope he can come back. About the cleaning fee and the rental per hour. Thanks, Rocky. So I have a question, but first about the cleaning fee. So the community center and the Pioneer Hall could each be rented by the hour. So if I can give you a hypothetical that you have a community group, they rent it for 1 hour from 9 to 10, and then another group wants to rent it from 10 to 11. Do you require, does this require a cleaning in between uses? So therefore you will not allow two groups to meet back to back? Is it a cleaning per day and it can be split between different groups that are using it in that day? It's just, the application of the cleaning fee seems a little complicated to me. For an hourly use facility, I can understand it for a daily use or something like that.
My understanding that typically it's used one user per day, and the way it was set up was that would be a flat fee, and it wouldn't be dividable without coming back to this body to modify the miscellaneous fee, because I can't waive any fees pursuant to my delegated authority.
So your answer to my question is it's a flat fee per day, or is it?
It's per rental. That is how it's written and was written before, and we didn't make any change to that. So technically, if I had 4 or 2 users in there in the same day, they would both have to pay the fee. The cleaning most likely would not occur in between each of those. That is correct.
So they'd each pay for the cleaning fee, even though it wouldn't have been cleaned between the rentals? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying, because typically there's only a single user that uses it per day.
But that's not a requirement. You're not prohibiting more than one user using it per day.
Counselor, the way it is written is what I'm telling you is you're correct. It is set up to where there is that cleaning fee. And I don't have the authority to waive that fee if I have multiple users in one day. I have to charge each of them that cleaning fee and the hourly rate for the use, if it's adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bloom.
Just quick follow-up question on that, and now I've got to go through because I've been looking at other fee. I was looking at this research fee, but to this point, you were talking about the flexibility. My understanding, and I remember reading at some point in this packet, that you do have flexibility to provide discounts, correct?
I have, if approved, we've put in there a 20% discount based off of market and marketing conditions, yes.
Okay, so to the Councilor Kaplan's point about the cleaning fee, you could technically provide a discount if
of only
requested.
20%.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
How difficult would it be in the process that you are going to be putting in play to manage these facilities? How difficult would it be to adjust the cleaning fee if there were multiple people in during the day and there wasn't a cleaning in between them? How challenging would that be to manage those elements?
Great question. And now I'm buying time as I talk here to come up with an answer. To have a full cleaning of all the restrooms and all that, which is what we would be hiring someone to come in at the end of the day, is typically when that deep cleaning occurs. We would just schedule that. The complexity would be is I would need to come back to this body to modify or ask for a delegated authority to have a different authority in regards to that cleaning deposit or the cleaning fee.
Or we potentially could add that this
Yes.
evening. But in terms of the operational side of that, it would probably be a circumstance where you would collect it. I'm just imagining.
Right.
We would collect it from everyone, and if it happened to be that they ended up on a day where there wasn't a cleaning between them and another user,
We'd be
that
able to prorate it between the
you would
users.
prorate it or probably have to refund it depending on how that works. So how challenging of an operational element is that?
It it wouldn't be that challenging. We'd be able to look at the schedule, and then staff would have to make that proration of a refund.
Okay, great. Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you. I have a question because and I appreciate that bringing up about the 20%, but as we are here with this in front of us, I would like to make a motion. It's not written, I just came up with this in my head, but something that our city manager said, that we are at cost recovery. This cost of $160 or $120 an hour is in perpetuity. Eventually, we will catch up with this cost. And it'll probably go up as the years go on. So my question is, instead of $160 and $120 per hour, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to rent Pioneer Hall on the weekends for $60 per hour and Community Center for $80 per hour for the next 4 years.
Councillor Bloom?
I'll second that for discussion.
Councillor Duquesne?
So the reason why I'm saying this is because I understand cost recovery. I understand the need to get paid back, and I understand that our residents are getting hit big time with new taxes that they weren't expecting. And that's why I appreciate the time that Councilor Dale took to rework and amend what was in front of us before. Cost recovery, this will get paid back. I feel it's important that we do something for our community. We work for the citizens of Ashland. They don't work for us. So I would like to, yes, cost recovery, and let's make it reasonable. I think that that's important, with your $100 for your cleanup, with the $25 for the electric on, and reduce the base rate.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, certainly, and I seconded for discussion. I'm certainly interested in making this more affordable, more available to the community, especially after so many years of it being closed. I think that 5 years is a bit too long. I would certainly be supportive of 2 years, so we could through the biennium. I think that that's reasonable, and I think it also allows Director Houston time to complete his pros plan and other conversations that we're having, at the higher level about strategic planning and finances and all of that. So I would be certainly comfortable supporting this if it was at 2 years.
Biennium, okay.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I appreciate this discussion, and I hate to be improvising here at the council. So what I would rather do is not approve any fee increase for Pioneer Hall or Community Center at this time, and ask the Parks Director to come through the Parks Commission because I'd like to have the Parks Commission's oversight of this, and then come back to us with something that accomplishes the objective of having a much more reasonable approach to cleaning, but also to the fee itself. This is I'd like to give direction about cost recovery. I think this is too high a level of cost recovery. I haven't heard much of a support of in what basis it's a full cost recovery. So it seems like an increase of several 100% really puts these buildings out of reach for many of our community groups who love those buildings and we're able to access those buildings because they were so inexpensive. It's a community building. It's not a profit center, just like I was persuaded by the director's comments about the golf course. We don't try to get full cost recovery. We try to, there's some cost recovery, but we're trying to make it an accessible facility, recreation facility. This is a different kind of facility, and it needs to be accessible. And at an hourly rate of $160 per weekend hour, if somebody wants to rent it for 4 hours, it just seems like a little bit too much. So I'd like to give direction to come back with a more affordable hourly rate, or maybe even discounts for multi-hourly rate, and then really thinking through the cleaning operation, because I think the way the cleaning fee was structured here just doesn't quite make sense because of the multiple users.
There's a motion on the floor.
So I'd like to amend the motion.
Can I, point of order?
Yeah.
Could I help here?
Yep.
Cleanly, I would encourage Councilor
First,
DeCane,
we
if you're
have to
willing to
remove-
withdraw your motion, and then we just make a new motion.
Thank you. Yes, I'm willing to withdraw my motion.
And you are as well?
Thank you.
Councilor Kaplan?
I'd like to make a motion.
Before you make that motion, may I just give a point of clarification that the resolution in front of you is for miscellaneous fees for only 1 year. We come back with miscellaneous fees every year in its entirety. So if you were to add one fee in there for multiple years, I mean, certainly we can, but it creates an exception in a sea of in the sea of fee booklets that we'll have to track. So I just wanted to make that point, that we come back every year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to strike the increases to the Pioneer Hall cleaning fee, all of the fees associated with the Pioneer Hall and Community Center, and ask staff to bring back a reasonable fee that at a lower cost and a reasonable approach for cleaning, with the review of the Parks Commission by 1 month from now. So I'd like to get it in time for fiscal 26. So I'm not trying to delay this.
Second.
Rocky, is that timeline manageable?
I have, I think it's June 11th is my next business meeting. On June 4th is when I would have, I could look to try to modify that to a special meeting because I need to have it before the 14th, I believe, for your meeting on the 20th or 21st? 17th. So I guess if we had an action on the 14th, would we have time to meet the agenda packet?
Yeah. I'm happy to have this be the first meeting in July. That it's not super time sensitive. So I was trying to be helpful.
Right. No, I'm just.
So let's just
it may be able to happen.
The fee book goes into effect July 1. So is your proposal to pull these fees out and the rest of the fees go into effect then?
Yep. And then they'd go into effect when we approve it on July 15th or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you can do it earlier, I'm happy to do it earlier. But if I don't want to break China if it's too complicated.
I'll work with our Park Commission to see if we can do a special meeting. Otherwise, we'll get it completed as soon as possible.
Okay. Thanks.
Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that as long as it's noticed 72 hours in advance, we're good. So if you do it on the 14th and it gets on the agenda, my understanding 72 hours is plenty of time to have it on our agenda on the 17th.
So we have requirements in terms of when we get information to our staff. to be included in the packet because we have asked staff to get us the packets early enough for us to review them, and we've asked for them to be complete. So I think we have to be careful about directing this sort of fast turnaround into packets because we have given specific instructions related to how we want those packets put together. Since it is not a time-sensitive issue, I think it is appropriate to get it back here as soon as we can without creating a big problem. Is that what you're thinking, Councillor Kaplan, in terms of your motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I have a question?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Councillor Kaplan.
Oh, I don't think I need to say any more. I think that, and I think that my intention is clear, and I'm happy for it to come back as early as you're ready. But if not, the third week of July is fine.
Councillor Bloom. No. Councillor Duquesne, did you have anything else?
I was going to support July, coming back in July at our July meeting, allowing Parks Commission an opportunity to give this the time that it needs, because this is important for our community. So we have a July date, and I would stick with our first meeting in July.
So we need to make the record clear. Your original motion, I think, was to extend it a month. So we need to have a good date in your motion. I think we need to withdraw it, and let's get a date that you guys can agree on and there.
What is that date?
As soon as possible. I'll just withdraw the date and just say as soon as possible.
Is that
Is that
adequate in terms of
sufficient?
process, or do we need to withdraw it and start over?
You want me to start all over again?
That would be cleaner.
Yeah.
Okay, withdraw my motion.
Withdraw?
Second.
Okay, I would I make a motion to direct staff to just to delete the increases for all fees associated with Pioneer Hall and the community center and bring back a revised fee structure that takes into account affordability and possible lower rates for cleaning, shared cleaning, and maybe longer use coming through the Parks Commission because I want the Parks Commission review on it as soon as possible.
Second.
Okay.
I don't need to say any more.
All right. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Duquesne, you had a request for an agenda item?
Yes.
The hearts?
Oh, I forgot about that.
We need to approve the feed book.
Oh, that's correct. We have simply amended this twice, and now we need a motion to approve it as amended. Councillor Bloom.
Yes, thank you. That's an important part of this. I move approval of the resolution number 2025-09, titled "A Resolution Adopting Miscellaneous Fees and Charges Schedule and Repealing Prior Fee Resolution 2024-14 as amended."
Second.
Councillor Bloom?
No.
Councillor Kaplan?
No.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Duquesne.
No.
Hanson.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I make my motion, I wanted to say that I appreciate what my colleagues have put in motion regarding consent agenda E. However, I cannot support the miscellaneous fees in its totality. However, I would like to make a motion that we add the hearts from our sister city of Guanajuato to our agenda this evening.
Second.
Councillor Duquesne? And we're, at this point, we're just speaking to the timeliness of adding it today, and then we'll
Yes,
speak to the
that's
issue
what I was
later.
gonna- Yes, and that's what I was going to say. This is time sensitive. My colleagues love that. And so I'm just keeping us on our toes. It's a wonderful opportunity for our sister city and for Ashland. Details to come.
Councillor Kaplan?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Great. Any further discussion or questions? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson.
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
We will add that under new business, so recognizing that we need to be complete at 9:30 or have a motion on the floor at that point. We move on now to special presentations. We are at the proposed changes to the enhanced law enforcement area process.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm Ty O'Meara, Police Chief. Give me 1 second, please. All right, after much dramatic delay, here we are with one slide for your consideration. Is this on? Now it's on. I've got one slide for your consideration. And apparently we have one screen for your consideration over there. I don't know if you can see it there.
You
Okay.
can see it.
The Enhanced Law Enforcement Area tool has been an effective tool since 2012. Currently, you need 3 or more qualifying convictions to be considered for violation level offenses. This is a good tool, but it's very bulky and cumbersome and slow-moving and non-responsive, non-reactive to chronic negative behavior displayed in an enhanced law enforcement area. It requires that the convictions occur, and then the city attorney's office files a motion with the municipal court judge. Now, previously, I had the misstep of bringing a carbon copy of Medford's ordinance, and I now realize that that is not appropriate for Ashland. And so what we are asking, whether there is council appetite and interest in a kind of middle-of-the-road process that allows for greater reactivity and responsiveness to chronic negative behavior, but has it remain with multiple violation level charges and judicial review. So if we are directed to come back with this proposed language, the officers would issue the qualifying violation notices. At each instance of issuing that would provide physical literature to a defendant indicating that repeated negative behavior could result in expulsion from an enhanced law enforcement area. After the 3 qualifying charges are submitted, each time that person being given that reminder literature that continued negative behavior could result in us going to the municipal court judge. At that time, the officer would fill out paperwork and approach the municipal court judge and say, I have documentation that this individual is repeatedly violating the community standards. There are multiple charges levied against this person. At every turn, this person has been given documentation that repeated violations would potentially result in expulsion, and then ask the judge to make a determination about that. If the judge agrees to expel that person, then of course that person would be able to appeal that expulsion back to the judge. So that is the direction that I am asking council for, whether or not there is interest in us bringing this change to the already in place ELEA process, not the fact that there is 2 ELEAs, but the process that just addresses the middle section and makes it more reactive to chronic negative behavior.
Great questions. Councilor Bloom and then Kaplan.
Thank you, and thank you for barely dealing with us, I guess, for the last 4 months, trying to have this conversation. So you mentioned how this deals with the middle section, and this is about the process of it. But there was conversation around this dais as well about removing items like dog licenses.
Yes.
Is that included in this? Will be proposed here, or?
No, I would not propose that dog license required and proof of rabies vaccination be required. I would propose that dog control remain in there, but I would not propose that dog license required be a qualifying violation that could lead to expulsion.
I appreciate that. And so is that something that we could give direction to include in a draft ordinance that would come before us?
Absolutely.
Great. Can I do that
When
now,
we
or-
get to that point.
Sure.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Ty, and thanks for coming back with something that is attempts to respond to some of the concerns that some of us expressed previously. I have two questions, really. One is I appreciate that the officer would present the information to the court, and that and then the judge would make a decision. So I've got a question about how the defendant would be notified that he's got a court date so that he could actually present information in his or her own defense.
Well, we can configure this any way that council directs us to configure it. The idea that we tentatively have kicked around is that the officer applies for the expulsion. If the expulsion order is granted, the next time the officer locates that defendant, says, you have been expelled from this area. This is not actionable right now, but you need to leave the area, and you have 10 days to go talk to the judge if you want to appeal this expulsion. That is the way that we have framed it in our conversations.
And why did you choose to go that approach rather than give the defendant an opportunity to actually defend themselves before the judge and say, well, no, there's this reason or that reason? That seems like normal process to try to defend yourself when accused. Otherwise, the judge has very little basis other than the word of the officer that the violation occurred.
We can certainly do that. I mean, this is a collaboration in process or in progress. There are other processes in place, like the expulsion from parks, where just based off of an officer's observations that somebody has violated parks rules, that person is expelled at the officer's command. And if you want to go appeal that expulsion, you can go talk to the municipal court judge, or if there's somebody else as the hearings officer. There are other allowances, as we've covered in previous conversations, where officers are allowed to admonish somebody based on their own authority. You need to knock off this negative chronic behavior as of right now, and if you want to go appeal to the circuit court judge, you can. One of the things that if we do make it a process where we give a person a chance to go to contemporaneously plead his or her case with the judge, I would not want us to be hampered by the fact that that person doesn't show up. And if that person chooses not to show up, then the judge should have the ability and the freedom to issue that order without that person being present, if that's the direction the council wants to go.
Point of order, I'm sorry. So just so the council's clear, this special presentation, this request was just to see if the council wanted to move forward with the change in the process to the ELIA that's already in place. If you guys, it sounds like you are, but you have some questions, this might be a more appropriate thing for a study session where you guys could have that conversation and not hypothetically see what could and couldn't be in there. Just given the amount of stuff on the agenda, that might be an appropriate.
I'd be happy for this to come back to a study session. I think it would. I think we are going in a certain direction, but I think I'm willing to see it in a study session and look at the specifics. One of my questions, is what I already said. The other one has to do with standard of evidence, which is what I would ask some clarification on in a study session. But if this is not an opportunity for that sort of conversation, I'm happy to do it in a study session.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take the public comment, the people who have signed up. We're going to do that now, and then we'll come back to the question of council direction. We have 3 people who have signed up to speak. You'll come up again to the microphone. There's a signal alongside you that gives you the red, yellow, and green button, or the light, to let you know how close you're getting to the end of your time. You'll each have 3 minutes. The 3 people who have signed up to speak are Debbie Neiswander, Kate Hartzell, and Eric Novikis. Please, if you would, line up in that order. And then when you start, please tell us your name and the city in which you reside. Go ahead.
Debbie Neiswander, Ashland, Oregon resident. The chief talks about chronic offenders, but yet we're willing to suspend somebody, exclude somebody from an area for 90 days for one misdemeanor level crime. and more than likely, that's going to be a trespass charge. So I think that's just way over the top. Secondly, it says here violation level offenses often take weeks or months to reach conviction. When the officer gives the ticket for a violation, they're not required to come to court, and generally these folks do not come to court, and they're guilty by default right then and there. So that's kind of a little off as far as I'm concerned. Also, as far as the appeal process, I'm in the process of filing a few appeals, and we're having a lot of problems. I've given you in your packet the appeal process, and the appellant shall pay a non-refundable appeals fee for the appeal, and the appeal fees shall be set by resolution by council. That hasn't been done. So we're at a loss. We can't file an appeal until that's done. Also, in your packet, municipal court, we put together a little notice of appeal to help guide individuals in their appeal. The night lawn expulsion criteria isn't on there. They weren't even aware of it. There is no ordinance pertaining to that. It's just a bunch of rules. And then as far as Medford and their ELIA goes, they have in conjunction with that, with the expulsion, they have outreach court, okay? I put that in your packet. It occurs once a month, and it's actually tomorrow. And so I recommend that you all attempt to attend to see what it's about. We are having conversation about outreach court. It's non-criminalizing, okay? I've given you a copy of the intake forms and the check-in forms. It's a great program. Our judge is very familiar with it. He worked under Virginia Greer in Medford under municipal court. I'm just not for any of these proposals. They're not. It's just not working. The timeframes are too long. And you know what? When you exclude them from one area, we're going to have more people on the night lawn. We don't have room on the night lawn. We only got slots for 18 folks. We also lost one records clerk, and we also just lost one municipal court clerk.
Thank you.
It's going to be a problem.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Hartzell. I live in Ashland. I'm sympathetic to the issues that are trying to be addressed in this kind of strategy. I am not at all supportive of the kind of strategy that goes as far as this does. It reflects really the growing trend at the national level and across the country to remove people's access to courts, to remove the presumption of innocence, and the president's move to try to remove habeas corpus. I get you not wanting to go that far. This is a very cautious thing, and it needs to be done carefully. I have some questions. They're based on what information I found online, and I was trying to follow Ty this today and find out where things are at, and I realize you're kind of looking at everything right now. Questions involve whether you petition the judge before your conviction has been adjudicated or after it's been adjudicated and counted as one of the three. And of course, my understanding of reading the materials is that you skip the three and go straight to one if it's a crime, which could be trespassing, which if you look at the status crime of someone who's living on the street, trespassing is pretty easy to do. Have the court delays slowed down? Has there been improvement in the court delays that are cited in the materials because we now have a new judge? As I understand it, there was a period of time when we didn't. And so obviously things like this would kind of get backed up. The current proposal is still as difficult going through the materials, whether the current proposal draft was to let the officer petition the judge directly, or whether, again, those had to be or the officer had power to immediately exclude someone. I have a question about the remaining in versus not going to and from places like work, court, medical facilities. That wasn't clear to me in reading the materials. How do you get somewhere that you can remain in without going to and from? So there needs to be hopefully better articulation around that. The PowerPoint charts that were used, and I get it that it was back in February when this was just starting, but it seemed to me that there were more infractions included on that chart than fall under the ELA categories. So again, information is critical. I said it back then and I say it again now. Make sure that as you go forward into the study session that you have the right information to help you really analyze what's happening, where the problem is, and what's really going to help it. The 2024 downtown chart showed a huge spike. Why was that? And again, what I argued then is the pressure on the east may have been from the downtown and what was happening there. Also, status crimes. Are we okay with people walking around with open containers during Taste of Ashland and First Friday and COVID restaurants in the plaza? Or would we be enforcing this kind of thing there? I don't think we did then. But there is some differences of enforcement with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, this is a period in history where rights are being eroded aggressively by the Trump administration. People are literally being rounded up, sent to El Salvador prisons. The basic constitutional concepts of equal protection and due process are broadly under attack. In this context, it is especially disturbing to see the city of Ashland considering this ordinance that similarly undermines equal protection and due process protections. The 14th Amendment was ratified following the Civil War. It was a sort of compromise to address the rights of the freed slaves, a marginalized and impoverished population of people. 40 acres and a mule that were guaranteed to those people, and the freedmen's bureaus that were intended to educate the freed slaves were traded away for the right to vote and equal protection under the law. When we undermine these basic rights of equal protection, due process, we undermine these hard-fought battles to ensure justice to poor people and other marginalized people. This ordinance allows the police to target citizens for removal and exclusion from the commons based on the accusation of a petty misdemeanor. Despite a superficial petition to the court, the charge has no trial, no presumption of innocence. They are assumed guilty and denied their liberty to enter the commons under the threat of arrest and imprisonment. This is flagrantly in opposition to the basic due process demands of the Constitution. In this case, the charged then has the right to appeal after they've already been denied their basic rights to liberty. This procedurally, how does this even work? Obviously, one would appeal on the basis that they were improperly charged for the crime. Well, no record of conviction has been established. This simply procedurally doesn't work. What Bob brings forward, a proposal to allow them a trial over their pre-conviction conviction, the whole thing becomes procedurally so convoluted, it does not work. And this is establishing a very dangerous precedent. Imagine this applied to a community where we have a large minority of, say, black people, impoverished black people who are possibly more engaged in criminal activity. How does this apply to that community? I mean, we're an all-white community, but how would this apply to a black community? Ashland has been moving in a really good direction recently, trying to find real solutions. We have ORA. We've really done a good job, and let's continue down that path. We don't need to continue to go back the other direction towards enforcement. It just doesn't work to address this complicated problem of poverty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So to answer the question of staff, which is specifically about moving forward with an ordinance with these elements identified in it, what I'd like to do is go around and just find out from each counselor, because we're just providing direction this evening, what that direction, what type of direction you would like to see for staff at this point. Whoever would like to go first, I'm happy to have folks go first. Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, in short, yes, as City Attorney talked about, we'll clearly have a study session, but direction my direction would be yes.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, I'm not much interested in delaying this further, and I think it's appropriate to have this conversation now, but yes, and I also have not been dealing with this as long as Chief O'Meara has, but for the better part of the year, I've been looking at this issue and the case law around it, and I'm happy for anybody out there that is interested in actually understanding how this ELIA works and what the process is to sit down, have a phone conversation, have coffee, and walk through those steps. But yes, I would like this brought forward, and I would also, per my previous statement, would like to see the dog license element included in your change, included in your what you bring forward.
Councilor Hansen?
Sure, thanks, Mayor. Chief, I appreciate that this came back with a lot of the direction that council gave previously implemented, so thank you. I mean, when it first came out, we requested a check and balance with the court, and we have that now. I'm still interested in that study session to know more about the data that's out there. I know that the business and resident community from south side of Ashland's there was a vocal population really asking for this. And so I'm still open to it, but I don't know yet whether I'm where I sit with it. So I appreciate the additional information and the hard work in it, and I look forward to the study session.
So you're a no. Just specifically, you don't want staff to come forward at this point with that ordinance. I have to tally.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. I'm a no. I would like more information.
Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm still kind of trying to digest the previous public little speech there. Anyway, yes, I am in favor of Chief coming back. We're almost there. We're almost there. Goodness, since February. I've seen good changes in moving forward, and I don't want to belabor this. And so if we are looking at things to come back as soon as possible, Chief, I'm hoping this can come back as soon as possible. And something that was mentioned earlier that I was going to bring up in moving forward, there is not necessarily an appeals process, because I was looking at that, and in the information that you gave us, you said the person would have 10 days to appeal. Well, what is that process? So maybe when you come back, that we could have a dollar amount and kind of know what that is, so that we can just put a bow on this and call it done the next time we get together.
Thank you. And the process is whatever we make it. So whatever the council wants to make it, we can make it that.
So we would discuss that at our study session.
Well, that's the question. When you say bring it forward, do you mean bring it forward as an ordinance back to this body, or bring it forward in a study session?
I would say maybe at our study session, if we could have a draft ordinance, I think that would be great for us to get the ball rolling so that we can put a bow on this.
So to clarify, what would come back in the study session is a draft ordinance for discussion.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, I thought it was a little weird to have this as a presentation, and then our city attorney kind of called us to the carpet saying you can't ask too many questions about it because it's a presentation. So I think a study session is absolutely what this should have been, and I'm sorry that I don't know if we wasted a chunk of time here, but we certainly had you come here and hear from us a little bit. I have lots of questions, or several questions, and I raised some of them, so I'll be bringing those to the study session as well, and I'm happy to have a study session.
Councilor Hansen?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the public testimony by everybody that showed up today. And I'm really curious, again, getting some refreshed data in front of us. Chief, if you could bring that forward with the draft ordinance. And then I'm also really curious about learning more about the Medford Municipal Outreach Court. And I'll look into it personally, but I will be bringing this up at the study session. And I wonder, I mean, we now have a municipal judge who I believe is being very effective and working through the cases very, very expeditiously. But this is really appealing to me, and I know that our unhoused community has a lot of barriers that other people don't have. So what is Outreach Court, and how could it benefit Ashlanders, the police department, unhoused, everybody. If it's something that we could incorporate in our community, I'd like to hear yes or no, based on some research on your part and your presentation would be great. And thank you.
And we'll tidy all this up at the end and have specific direction. Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick note on the previous comments. I just think that it's important that everybody up here understands that what we are talking about and what the ELIA is about behavior. It is not about status, and I am very much open to having the conversation about an outreach court and more services, but they should be separated from this conversation because this clearly, very clearly, in the legal language, is about behavior, not status, and those two things should not be confused. Additionally, I would also request of staff, specifically city attorney, I sent over a legal matrix to you that you received. I think it would be helpful for council and the community to see that. It goes over what the due process legal standard is, what the proposed ELIA mechanism does, key cases referenced in that, and how the standard is met by the ELIA. I think it'd be a very useful tool for all of us.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to also echo what Councillor Hansen said about interest in some of these other programs, the outreach court. So if we're trying to really come up with some solutions to the situation that our police are finding on the ground, I'd like to put all these topics on the table and have a more robust discussion with the data that support the potential actions that we would be considering. So I'm looking forward to the study session.
So from taking the temperature of the council, it appears that we are headed towards another study session. And we have some specific information that the council would like. And as I go through these elements, I would like to see a head nod if this looks right. Yes. The question of the dog licenses and whether those are included. Is that something that you want brought back to that study session? And you don't have to answer each one. I just want a head nod.
Brought back for discussion, Mayor.
Brought back for discussion. Do we want to consider not having a licensed dog be an issue? Right now, not having a license is on the list for the ELIA, correct? Yes. Yes. So the question is, when they come back, there's a consideration to remove that dog license element and just make it a question of a dangerous dog, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay. So yes, we will include that element. And we're going to talk about the outreach court separately. We're looking for some legal guidance. Does that sound right?
The draft.
Well, just legal guidance from our city attorney, and I mean to his, in your best judgment. Is there interest in getting that legal read on this?
Yes.
Okay, we'll include that. We'll include that. And then separately or together, depending on how it works in terms of timing, it seems that what we also need alongside of this is a conversation with the judge, potentially, about the potential of an outreach court in our court system. How does that work?
So that needs to be a separate discussion. As
Right.
we are asking the judge to rule on something, we don't want to include him in that original conversation with the ordinance.
Right, as a separate conversation. So I think I've given the direction in terms of the ELIA. Chief, do you have any other questions that you need answered in terms of that study session?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, so then the second question is the question about the potential.
So I will reach out to the judge
Use
and
of
talk
court.
to him about having a discussion about
Yes.
outreach court.
At whatever point we can bring that in. Okay, and everyone here is interested in hearing about that as a set.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Hansen.
Yeah, I think this is the second time bringing Judge Mulkins into the conversation has been brought up. I don't know if you all recall back in February. So again, it was proposed as a separate study session and/or idea conversation, and I wholeheartedly support it. Now that it's coming back around with this other topic, I think it's super appropriate. And I would love to just get Judge Mulkins' take on this whole thing from whatever angle we can, whatever's appropriate and legal. But I appreciate the idea of bringing him into the fold somehow.
Well, I think those are two separate questions from what I was just hearing, and that we're requesting the legal read from our city attorney in terms of the ELIA, but then having a separate conversation in terms of the potential for the alternate court. Yes? Okay. Thank you, Chief. We now move on to our second special presentation, the comp and class study results. And we have our consultants. Are they coming in on Zoom? Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh no.
What happened?
He hit him.
Who hit who?
He was being racist. It was. Our criminals. That's what I said. I'm digesting.
Okay, we are going to take a 5-minute recess.
He was. Totally. That was a racist slur, that all black people are criminals. That's what I said. That's what he said. I was trying to come down from that.
So let's turn off our mics and just take a break.
Yep.
Oh, hey, I'm gonna give you the information back about outreach court, is that what it called?
Yep.
Oh, I got this. Huh?
Yeah. I call the meeting back to order. I have just called a recess because in the space of the last few minutes, we have had 2 acts of violence that have disrupted the work of this council, and they have disrupted the trust in this space. One of them was verbal, one of them was physical. We are in very difficult times right now, and the way we manage through them is by protecting the public spaces, protecting the ability to speak, and understanding that that ability to speak comes with a responsibility to speak respectfully and to hold the space for all people, and to understand how our words land, and to make a commitment to appropriate public discourse. My hope is that we will not have anything like this happen again in this council chambers. We are moving on now to public forum. Alyssa, has anyone signed up for public forum?
We have another presentation, Mayor.
Oh, that's right. We have the other, exactly. Hello. So, take us away, Molly.
Molly Taylor, Human Resources Director. In the 23-25 biennium budget, Council approved funding for a comp and class study. The last comp and class study done by the city was over 15 years ago. Last year, we contracted with McGrath Human Resources Group to conduct a comprehensive study of employee classification and compensation. The recommendations resulting from the study help to ensure that positions are not only competitive with the market, but that they are also internally equitable throughout the organization. This study provides a standardized methodology for classifying positions, not only when new positions are added, but when current employees are performing outside the scope of their job descriptions, and will provide an objective basis for making promotional decisions. In addition, as we continue to work with our various unions, this study provides a roadmap to effectively and fairly negotiate. The Human Resources Department continues to look at ways to recruit, develop, and retain a highly skilled and diverse workforce. This study provides the tools and resources to achieve our goal of being an employer of choice. I would now like to introduce Victoria McGrath from McGrath Human Resources Group to talk about the results of the comp and class study.
Great, thank you very much for this opportunity. And then hopefully I'll be sharing my screen and you'll all see it. I do have a presentation. Unfortunately, I'm not as good as your police chief that only had one slide. I have more than one slide, so I apologize for that. Again, just so that everybody knows, I'm Dr. Victoria McGrath. I'm CEO of McGrath Human Resources Group. We were a group that was established our business in the year 2000, so this year we're celebrating our 25th anniversary in the business. There are 2 sides to the business. McGrath Consulting Group Inc. is the parent company. We do public safety consulting, police, fire, EMS, and dispatch from the county level on down. And then we broke off to McGrath Human Resources Group as a subsidiary because people thought we only did police, fire, EMS, and dispatch, and we don't. We look at the entire organization from the county level on down. And so our specialty is human resources. And our major focus, or the major business emphasis we have, is compensation studies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did, how we did it, and some of the recommendations that we have for the city. In order to do this study, obviously we have over 620 some clients in 41 different states. We've worked quite a number of organizations in both Oregon and Washington and your end of the country, but we don't know you. And so we did spend some time interviewing with administration and department leadership to make sure we understood your services, what your job titles are. Sometimes job titles can be very misleading as to what they are, so we talked about what those are. We talked about challenges and issues you might have with your current compensation system. Basically, understanding what your goals and objectives were within this study so that we could tailor a product that is going to work for you. We did look at your current compensation system, your job descriptions, your current policies, and the study did include union and non-union positions. Because you are going to be going into bargaining, the information we give you will include all of those parties. I will not be breaking them out by those respective classifications. We did receive employee input, not every employee, but we do ask that we get a position questionnaire completed for every job title. Position questionnaire is an online document. It's like a satisfaction survey. You kind of go through it. Employees can complete it. And then once they are done, it goes to a supervisor for review, and then it comes to us for review. Now, with that being said, if there are multiple people holding one job title, we either will ask them to do it as a group, or we designate one person to do it. That's in conjunction with the department director. If they say, no, they all have the same job title, but they do something completely different, then we're going to ask for a position questionnaire for each one of them to see if there is any significant differences between them. We do go out and solicit external market data. We'll talk about that briefly, about the type of data we have. We look at the salary schedules. We also look at incumbent data because that gives us a truer reflection of what's going in the market than maybe sometimes a salary schedule does. And then once we had all the recommendations put together, we did meet with Human Resources and some of the department directors to go over that schedule to make sure that it was, did we miss anything, or did we understate or overstate something? And finally, we did collect information on benefits. I'm not going to spend much time on benefits tonight. I'll just tell you the topics we looked at. Benefits take a little bit more time to work at. Plus, you have to get your benefits broker involved and look at whether or not some of these changes are something that you can do, at least not only organization-wide, but through your contract negotiations. Before we get into the study, I think it's a good time to step back and take a look at your employee demographics, because that tells us a lot about your organization. And I think there's a couple of pieces here that are really something to discuss. Number one, 33% of your workforce is under the age of 40. And I'm going to be very stereotypical here. That's the generation that doesn't stay. I had a client last year called it the shiny object generation. If they see something where it's $2 more, or I can do something different over here, they're going to go. And it doesn't make them, bad employees. In fact, they're very good employees. The question is going to be, what is it that you're going to do as an organization that's going to keep them there so that you have that retention with that group of individuals. The good thing about you have about 59% of you are between the 40 and 59 age group. And that's a very stable workforce. So you have a really nice grounded group of individuals there that obviously know their positions. But out of that group and going beyond that, 34% of their age 50 and above. And since I qualify for that, we need to take a look and say, hey, those folks are going to be exiting the organization over the next 10 years or so. And what are you going to do for succession planning? What are you going to do to make sure that you have somebody, ready to move into those positions as they exit the organization? One of the things you will say, your average years of service is 8.76. You should be very proud of that. The Bureau of Labor Statistics right now came out and says 6.12 years is the average years of service for local government employees. So your retention is working at this point in time, and what are you going to do to continue to maintain that? We developed a list of comparable organizations. That list was first discussed with administration. We then met with each department director, and from that they gave us recommendations of who they would like us to look at. And so from that we put together a list that was then given to the city for approval. We take the comparables very seriously. We'll talk about that in the next coming slides, and the fact that just because we gather information from them doesn't mean that we use that information. By that I mean, we look at outliers. We are going to take that information, we're going to say, okay, are there any positions or are there any salaries that are too high or too low? And those are going to be eliminated so that we do not skew the average of an organization. So that is done by a per position analysis. There is a proprietary formula that I developed many years ago with an organization called World at Work, which used to be called the American Compensations Association. And so that we want to make sure that we're not putting in any data that might skew that. I've said this for years, this is not a reflection of your organization. All elected officials want me to put the lowest paying organizations in. All employees want me to put the highest employee organizations in, then I'll make either one of you happy. So we spend a lot of time looking at that data and then determining whether or not it will or will not remain within that average. Once we have that average, we then compare it to your organization, and we do something called a comp ratio. A comp ratio is the ratio of, let's say, for example, your minimum to the average market minimum of that benchmark position. 50% means it's at the average market rate. Right now, because of the way we have employment issues and a labor, we don't have a vast market to choose from. Anything that's considered 45% comp ratio or below is considered to be out of market, and we need to look at it and see if it needs to be adjusted. Above that means you're paid appropriately, and there may be no adjustments that need to be made with your salary range. Looking at that comp ratio, right now, if we look at your minimum to the average market minimum, we have about 58% of the benchmark positions that are under the average market rate. I say benchmark positions because, and I never have gotten market data for every position within your organization. So of the benchmark positions, we do have a number of positions that we have to take a look at and say, hey, why is it that they're lower than the average market? However, 42% are aligned appropriately, so there really doesn't need to be that much of an adjustment with those particular positions. The midpoint is in some compensation systems, and we did not know whether or not that was something that was done when your compensation system was developed 15 years ago. The midpoint sometimes represents the average market rate. The average market rate means that I should be at that salary, around that salary, within 4 to 7 years because I'm fully capable and competent of doing the job. And it's very clear that the schedules that were developed 15 years ago did not represent that average market point because 75% of those midpoints are not reflective of the average market rate. Everybody develops schedules differently. Your schedule was just not developed with that target in mind. Maximums, I always show the maximums because people want to see them. I don't take a lot of credibility into maximums because everybody develops their salary ranges very differently. I'm working on 3 different comp plans right now where I have a 40%, a 55, and a 60% range between minimum to maximum. So again, 69 of your positions do not have the same earning capacity as other positions, but again, it's going to be dependent on how those salary schedules were actually built. So there needs to be some improvement in your maximums, but it's not something that I'm very concerned about. This one is very reflective of the market. We take a look at what people are actually making in your organization and compare it to what people are actually making within that same type of position. It also gives us a reflection of whether or not people are moving through that salary schedule. And right now, 79% are under market. Now, with that amount, we do need to take into consideration, if you remember before, I said 33% of your population is under 40. You've got a lot of new folks in there, so I would expect to see folks in the 30 to 40% comp ratio because they haven't been there that long. They're at the lower end of the salary schedule versus somebody who might have been here much longer who's at the upper end of that salary schedule. So this really just tells me that we've got these positions that are probably here are probably in positions that are under market. So we're taking a look at, you are paying most of your employees pretty competitively based upon their years within the organization. Your biggest issue here is, your market is okay. There's some adjustments that have to be made. But I will tell you this, I've been doing this for over 25 years, and I will say that I used to say I'm going to charge employees based upon the number of times they tell me they're unique, because nobody really is that unique, and I apologize, but you are unique. I have never seen salary schedules like the ones that you have. They're all over the map. They don't go in any type of order. Some are 3 pay grades, some are 16 pay grades, some have 3 steps, some have 5 steps. The steps range between 2% and 15% apart. There is considerable overlap with all these ranges. I actually tried to put all of these salary ranges together in some sort of hierarchy. You've got some that maybe are only $1 or $2 more than somebody else on another pay range. And I think the schedule itself really needs some desperate help. I think you would have some really difficulties, especially with Oregon's pay equity, to determine why some people are on this pay range are paid differently than this pay range when they might have similar types of positions. So the focus of this was to clean up your salary schedules, because they really are very, they need help. There's no methodology in how to place positions, and so I think that became the focus of the study. One of the things we always talk about is there's a compensation philosophy. Where do you want to place yourself within the market? There are some organizations we work with, they want to lead the market, they want to be higher than average. I will tell you, in 25 years, the vast preponderance of public sector employers want to be at the average. And then we do have some organizations that we've had to work with where we've had to follow the market because financially they just can't handle it. And after having conversations with your administration, we are going with the average market rate. We're not trending your compensation system to be higher than average with that. So what I did, because we have union and non-union positions and we have these numerous salary schedules, we actually said, okay, let's get a nice infrastructure in place and put all of your positions, whether they're union or non-union, onto one salary schedule. Make it consistent. Let's look at placing positions so that there's internal equity across the organization, again, regardless if they're union or non-union. It helped really align the hierarchy within the organization. Because you had so many schedules, as I mentioned before, we had a lot of compression. Compression comes in various forms, but one is, why would I want to take the promotion to here if I'm at the top of the salary schedule, or I might be losing money as a result of it? By putting everything on one schedule, we were able to really make sure that you're aligned throughout the entire organization, and it's also going to help you with the Oregon Pay Equity Act. As I said before, you have a variation of steps all over the place, and so now we have eight steps, and there's 3% between each step. That means there is a reduction in some of the percentages, because some of them are 5, some of them are 15, and so now it's consistently 3% between each step. Step 4 does represent the average market rate, which means I should be at step 4 within 4 to 5 years. That means I'm fully capable and competent of doing the job. Now, in some cases, it's a reduction in it's an increase in the number of steps, and some people might say, well, hey, it's going to take me longer to get to the top. Well, the question becomes, you want to have retention, and you want to have employees continue to receive increases on an annual basis. And so having a few more steps here does allow for that retention. It also, because we have 8 steps, it does allow you some flexibility in hiring. So therefore, if you've got somebody who has just the skills and experience necessary to do the job, you're going to bring them at step one. But we also at least have recommended that you could bring folks further within that salary range, up to step 4, if they feel that they've got a skill set or experience that is really helpful and, is going to bring some value to your organization. You can start them higher than step 1. I totally understand that you're dealing with bargaining units, and so even though the schedule right now is looked at all at one, I think HR has already broken it out into the different types of unions that are there. I put electric on. Electric is a very different animal when it comes to salary schedules. It's not unusual to see what you have where there's only one salary rate or maybe 2 salary rates. And if you did keep the schedule entirely together, I would probably still recommend you pull out electric because of its difference to the other organization. Once we have the market data, we then have to place positions within the salary schedule that we've developed. And this is, sometimes people want to glom onto just the market rates. But we actually use 4 different factors to place a position into the salary schedule. Obviously, we're going to use the position analysis. We did that. That turns into a point factor system. Positions that have similar points may be grouped together initially. From there, we're going to look at the external market. Well, the points may be the same, but the market is telling me something different. And so therefore, one may go into a pay grade F and one might go to a pay grade G just because the market is dictating that. We then look at compression. If I'm moving from this level to this level, where does the overlap of those salary schedules change? You still might have, with this schedule, a longer tenured employee make more than a brand new supervisor, but at what point does that supervisor's salary range now exceed the subordinate that they are supervising? And then lastly, we look at internal equity, making sure that, in some cases we might have 2 managers and I put them in 2 different pay grades, but the director says, hey, look, they really much do the same thing. They're cross-trained. I want them in the same pay grade. And so for internal equity purposes, we're putting them in the same pay grade. So when you look at this, don't just look at one factor. I have to look at all 4 different factors in order to place positions within a salary range. Now that I've got the salary range, what do we do with employees? And so typically what we do is initially we give any organization the base costing, and they're placed on the closest step to their current pay without a decrease. So if I'm making $15 and the closest step is $15.01, I get a whole penny as a result of this schedule. I did not take into account their years in the position. So you could have an 8-year employee who is now down on step 4. The steps do not represent years of service, but they do look at, where should they be within that range based upon their years in the position. And so as a result of that, we can cause some in-range compression where you're going to have potentially bringing in newer employees, making very close to longer tenured employees. And I believe the city has done some costing to try to alleviate that. Overall, your schedule did very well. I mean, overall, the increase was about 3%. I'm sure these numbers have changed a little bit because my numbers are a little bit old, and I'm sure you've had some people leave, some people hired, some people promoted. But you do have a good chunk of folks that technically got 0 increase. It was the one where they got the 1 penny or the 5 cents, and that obviously doesn't come up to a percentage. The vast preponderance of your employees are between 1% to 4% increase. And you do have a handful of folks at 5% or greater, and those are obviously correlated to those positions that were outside of the market. Out of all the compensation studies, this is really a typical update. It's nothing unusual. You didn't come in extremely high as a result of this study. Obviously, you need to manage the schedule and you do the same thing that you have been doing annually. You need to look at whether or not those schedules need to be increased based upon the cost of living and obviously the step movement. Other considerations that are in the report, we do have fire department, we have added a couple tiers within each pay grade to account for whether if I'm an EMT, intermediate, or a paramedic. Police has some incentive pay. We've made some recommendations maybe about considering limit the number of incentive pays. But again, that's something that you need to take a look at. We also looked at health insurance. Where are you in compared to your comparables, time off, benefits? And we were asked to take a look at a 4-day work week. Not much on a 4-day work week at this point in time. There is a lot of research out there for 4-day work week in Europe, but not so much in the United States, other than the 4-10 type schedule. So we put some ideas in there for you to consider going for that. So with that, I'm going to stop talking now because you've obviously had a very eventful meeting, and I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. Questions? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you. This is great information and packed full. I'm curious, when we look at succession planning, and back earlier in the presentation, I believe you said that 34% or 50% are higher. So of our City of Ashland workforce, 34% are 50 years old or higher. And I'm just curious. I know that there's a event happening in our workforce where we will soon be seeing a lot of that market segment leaving the workforce. How are we relative to other organizations, like in terms of urgency for succession planning? Are we kind of like right in there with other municipalities? How do we stack up?
Yeah, actually you are. You know, you're probably a little bit, have a little bit, a larger group in the 40 to 59. Usually what I've been seeing lately is a very large number, a bigger percentage under the age of 40, a larger percentage in the 50 and above, and kind of weak in the middle. So you're really good in the middle. So I think you have some urgency, but I think it's something you need to really start planning on. You know, it's not something that you're going to, you know, if I'm 50 years old, I doubt very much if I'm going to be retiring anytime soon. But, you know, you do have some folks, you've got, let's say, I went back to the slide, you have 4 or 5, you've got almost 8% of your employees, you know, are 60 and above. And I think that's the group you need to kind of take a look at and say, who's in that age group? Are these key critical positions that we really need to start taking a look at? And have we been grooming folks, you know, into that? I'm only talking about compensation here, but if you really look at it from a total rewards package, part of the total rewards package is, you know, education, training, and you know, recognition, and moving those folks, you know, into those areas. So I think you're pretty typical, but something you need to have on the radar and start looking at.
Cool. Thank you.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this presentation. It was really it was fascinating, and the report itself was fascinating. I know that I'd been anxious to have this report for many years. I remember in my first budget committee session 3 budget committees ago, I learned that we hadn't had a comp and class study for over a decade. So I was appalled and glad that we finally got this done. It was both fascinating, I think, in terms of the snapshot that it provided of our workforce, and I think also just the really heavy lift of going ahead and cleaning up the schedule. So it'd be very useful to us going forward, and I really appreciate the work that you put into helping us clean this all up and going forward. One question is, what is what's the best practice in terms of updating a comp and class study like this? It's obviously been way too long since the last one, but now that we've got it, what's a good cadence to shoot for?
Good question. Obviously, especially since you spent the money on this one, you don't want to then have it turn around and, you know, 5-6 years later have to spend the money to redo it again. First thing you need to do is annually look at your salary schedule, because your salary schedule does need to reflect what's going on with the cost of living. I say pick an economic indicator and stick with it. I personally recommend the CPIU. It's not as fluctuating, excuse me, as a local CPI, and then determine whether or not you need to increase that schedule. Now, part of that you're doing anyway because you're doing contract negotiations, and so that you are keeping that schedule up. I then look at every 3 to 5 years, maybe doing a mini study. It's not as comprehensive as this. It doesn't require position questionnaires. It really is taking a look at that market again, going out, getting it, and maybe adjusting those ranges a little bit. That could be, let's say, for example, we drop off step 1 and we add a step 9. We have different percentages between each pay grade. It might be saying, okay, instead of an 8% between this pay grade and that, we're going to go to a 10%. And it's doing these minor course corrections throughout the way so that you don't really have to then turn around and do this big deep dive. I say 3 to 5 years only because I don't know what the economy is going to do. You know, we had years back in 2008 where, you know, 5 years was more than enough because the economy was stagnant, it wasn't going anywhere. Obviously, the last several years with the type of inflation we've had and the labor shortage, you know, every 3 years you better be keeping up on it or you're going to get too far behind.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. I agree that it is fantastic that we have this tool that we can use going forward, and appreciate the depth with which you have presented this to us. It's helpful to understand this tool that we now have in our toolbox. Thank you so much, Molly, for shepherding this process, and the council does not have any requirements this evening. There's no formal approval process, so we will then go on to our next agenda item. Thank you again so much.
And have fun. Okay.
We have 2 people who have signed up this evening for public forum. Each of you will have 3 minutes. The first person will be Stephen Mitchell, and the second, Debbie Neiswander. And so again, you'll come up to the microphone at the podium and tell us your name and the city in which you reside. Your 3 minutes will start. When you get to 20 seconds, you'll hear the first chime, but you can also keep track of your time with the clock up here to my right. So Stephen Mitchell first, and then Debbie Neiswander. Is Stephen Mitchell here? Okay, go ahead, Debbie Neiswander.
Hello, Debbie Neiswander, Ashland, Oregon. Okay. I want to give you an example of officer discretion. Yesterday morning on the night lawn, it was raining. It wasn't forecasted to rain, but it was raining. And the officer made everybody come off the lawn. And there was a lot of distress. Everybody's getting wet, all their things are getting wet. They're gonna have to pack all their wet things up into the bins. They're gonna come back in the evening with a bunch of wet stuff. It was so distressful that we lost a volunteer. It is very difficult for our volunteers to have to see this on a regular basis. Secondly, on the night lawn, in the last 2 months, we've only got 2 people into shelter, okay? We don't have enough shelter beds. We definitely don't have enough housing. And there's a lot of feelings of hopelessness. And in your packet that I gave you, I also gave you a copy of a CAD report. It's computer-aided dispatch. When you call in a call, they put together this sheet of response times and whatnot. I highlighted. This is when the night lawn was flooded. And this is the CAD report. It got a level 4 priority. That is the lowest level priority. A lot of individuals had their tents ruined, their bedding, computers, cell phones. The water was consistently on for an hour. There was no police report filed. It wasn't required. They were not compensated for anything. We were grateful the mayor came down with apologies, donuts, and fruit. Thank you. But I'm just trying to reiterate, this is what leads to folks not doing the appeal process. They don't feel it's going to do them any good. I'm going to keep, whoa. Okay, so we got 2 people into Rogue Retreat, Kelly Shelter. On May 29th, the kitchen grand opening for Aura from 4 to 5. There will be guided tours. There's a lot of good things happening at Aura. I hope you all can attend. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Johan, we are at 8 o'clock and we have the hearing requirement. So does that mean we need to postpone that item? Or what is the timeliness of it?
I don't believe that someone can make a motion to extend that, so I think we're going to have to move it to next meeting.
Postpone it to the next meeting? Okay.
We would need a motion for that, I believe, though.
Yes. Is there an issue of timeliness? No. Okay.
We just need a date certain for this one, though.
A date certain to bring it back. Do you have a recommendation for a date certain as we look at the look ahead? July 15th. Okay. We need a motion to postpone. Counselor Dale?
Mayor, may I ask just a point of
Yes.
clarification? So for the June 15th, correction, July 15th, you would need a first reading on July 15th? Or you would need a first reading? Okay, I'm prepared to make a motion, Mayor.
Counselor Dale?
Thank you. I move to table the first reading of ordinance 3261, amending the officially adopted physical and environmental constraints map, removing the locally adopted Ashland modified floodplain from Hamilton Creek, and schedule the first reading on July 15th, 2025.
Is there a second?
Nope.
Counselor Kaplan?
No.
Any discussion? Counselor Hanson?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Help me get up to speed here. Do the public hearings need to happen before 8?
Yes.
Okay. Did not know that. Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne? Yes. Hanson?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, so please be back in your chairs at 8:06 by that clock. I call the meeting back to order. We are at unfinished business, the water cost of service and rate study final draft update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Scott Fleury, Public Works Director, and I think on the ether is Josiah Close from HDR Engineering. HDR led the rate consultant study portion of the cost of service in conjunction with city staff coordination. And we previously presented in March, and the City Council requested a couple additional analysis to be performed associated with the rate structure. And so we went back to the table, and HDR updated the rate study based on a couple of varying analysis, one of which was expanding the shoulder seasons into May and October as far as the rate structure, looking at increasing or decreasing the rate up front and then changing that over time and drawing down ending fund balance, looking at a 0 to 500 cubic foot tier 1 cost and then breaking that into the rest of the commodity tiers, and then also looking at a higher upper end tier differential. So they went back. The presentation is in your packet. Josiah is going to go through the presentation and show you the outcomes of those analysis, and then hopefully we'll have a discussion and answer questions that the council may have at that time. So really, I just want to turn it over to Josiah and let him go through his presentation.
And Josiah, do you prefer that council ask questions as you go or at certain parts? I don't know how long your presentation is.
It's not super long, Mayor, thank you, but this is an important decision, so I'm okay as we've done it before where we kind of work through it, if that's okay with you. If you'd like to keep it to the end, I'm okay with that as well.
That's fine. We can take questions as we go.
All right. So as Scott said, we reworked some things, try to bring a little bit more information up front here on some customer usage patterns. So bear with me on this. It's a little busy, but I'll try to go through it, and then we can ask some questions if we need to. This is residential customer water use distribution. And that's by consumption bucket. So what we do is we look at monthly data for the residential customer class, and we look at their total consumption, and where they end that consumption, we put them into these buckets. And we average that across the year. And what this can do is help us to see how the customers are using water. And so you can see, and this graph more or less is pretty similar from agency to agency. But what we want to look at is your cumulative percentage as well. So this dashed orange line is referenced on the right-hand side percentages. And so when we typically talk about water rates for Ashland, we've been looking at that 700 CF. And so if we look over in between the 4 to 6 and the 6 to 8, we're capturing approximately 70% of customers' water use in that 0 to 700%. So I think it was a good indication for staff and HDR as we were looking at this, that we were in fact representing a lot of the typical water use patterns that we've seen. You can see it trends down after that. There's still a significant amount of customers in those buckets. And then, you'll see the spike around 1,000 to 1,500. Now that does, I will say part of that is the wizardry of statistics. We're changing from 200 CF steps to 500, but you're also seeing that represented with the summer water use patterns where you'll have a lot of customers jumping up into those upper buckets. And what we can see then, if we look at that data, by tier, so we then run it through our rate schedule, and this is our revised tiers. So now our off-peak season is November to April, and then May to October is at peak season. And when we went through, based on that recommendation from council to review that, you can see the tiers are working pretty well, and that you can see as consumption is starting to increase, then that's when those tiers under the revised structure is starting to work. And we do get a little bit of peaking within these, the second and third tiers. But what we want to do when we're thinking about designing rates is capture some of that peaking within the upper tiers, and that's where that conservation incentive or efficient water use incentive, that's where that, we're doing a check here to make sure that we're actually getting usage in those tiers, and it's sending the correct message from, again, efficient use, and then also from a planning perspective as we look at, our water supply portfolio and the cost that it takes to serve those customers with higher water demands. So for revenue generation mix, we also wanted to take a peek at that as well. So again, this is residential only. But what we looked at was, okay, let's see what for variable and fixed, what's our mix? And so what we saw was a little over 50% fixed and a little bit less than that for variable. And so that's a dependable source of revenue for the water utility. Typically, we're seeing expenses are more in the 70 to 90% fixed. However, cost recovery is often inverse of that, or related, more towards the variable component. And that's just based on industry trends, as well as, again, trying to incentivize efficient water usage. And so this is a pretty straight down the middle. And so that does help when we are adjusting tiers to minimize any risk that we have from, or seasons rather, in this case, that we would have any interruption in that variable component, because obviously that fixed component is unaffected. Then when we look at by tier, so when we think back to the prior graph where we had, once you got to the peaking seasons, and I mentioned tier 2 and 3 do include some of that peak, and you can see here as far as revenue generation, we do see a significant amount in the first 3 tiers, but also within tier 2 and 3. And so these are some of the things we wanted to think about as we played with the 0 to 500 number, as well as expanding the tier differentials for pricing, and thinking about maybe where the impacts would be for customers. This is all customers. We also want to look at total water usage. So under the current regiment for the seasons, our off-peak was around 45%, and the peak summer usage is around 55%. And with that revision, we're seeing now about almost, it's a little over 2/3 to 1/3 now. We've swung where the peak water usage is happening at about 71% and just under 30% for off-peak. And we also are at about a 6-month on-peak and a 6-month off-peak as well. So now to the alternatives, as Scott mentioned. So the base case is, I don't want to confuse people, but alternative 2 from the prior. So basically we were expanding the tier pricing slightly, but that was our base case. So we knew we did want to expand that differential between tiers. So we used that as our base case. And I'll note all of these alternatives hit the same results from a financial perspective by year 5. And we'll have a couple graphs for that to see, but that was our goal in this and working with staff was we wanted to maintain the same results within those revenue requirement results that we had. We wanted to maintain that. And they all use the revised seasons. So alternative one, we're increasing the tier differential. So spreading out the cost between tiers more than the base case. And then the goal there was trying to minimize the impact in the lower first and second tiers. As again, that's where the majority of those customers are at, and that's the direction that we had received. For alternative two, we looked at transitioning the rate adjustment over the 5-year period, starting with a lower adjustment and then moving to a larger adjustment by year 5. Again, getting to the same place as all the other alternatives and the base case by year 5. For alternative 3, this is where we increase the tier 1 size to 500 CF from 300 CF. And so tier 2 would then be from 500 to 1,000 instead of 300 to 1,000. And then 3A is the same approach to adjusting tier 1, but then we also added in the increased tier differential approach that we had from alternative 1. So that one has a couple more components, but we thought it was relatively related to 3, so that's where we got the 3A. So this graph shows our cumulative 5-year rate adjustment. So this is with compounding rates. Just as a note, don't try to add up rate adjustments. They won't equal the total with compounding. So as we, it's that interest on your bank account effect. As we increase rates, they compound upon each other. And so what we saw with the base case and alternative 1, we're about the same, about 80 or 88.4%. Alternative 2, because we do stair step into those rate adjustments, we do lose the upfront compounding that the other alternatives have because they are a flatlined approach to the rate adjustments.
Josiah, we have a question. Councilor Dale?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Josiah, just can you go back one slide, please? Although I think it says it there. Yeah. Okay, you said alternative 3, you said increase tier 1 to 500 cubic feet. Am I reading this correctly that you used the same, we'll call them dollar figures, or the same cost structure, but you just changed the cubic feet from 300? So if I look at your charts, alternative 1 and alternative 3 should be identical with the exception of the amount of cubic feet per minute, 300 versus 500. Is that correct?
Well, that's kind of. So on this, let's look at this chart, for example. So that's why you see a higher adjustment here is because we lose water in the second tier at a higher rate, and it's now charged the lower tier rate in tier 1.
Okay. May I follow up, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm specifically asking about the 0 to 1,000. So I'm specifically asking about the lower 2 tiers, which is to your slide, your subsequent slide said that's basically the bulk of where the water is used. So I'm just looking at those 2. And as I whipped together a spreadsheet of these in just the last few minutes, and those numbers at the first 2 tiers between alternative 3 and alternative 1 are not the same.
From a water use or from revenue?
From a pricing standpoint, like if I look at this chart, if I look at the slide that you have right here, and it says alternative 3, and you say increase tier 1 to 500 cubic feet, those tiers should be identical there. That's kind of what I was asking for a couple months ago was I would like to see the same numbers, but just increased in a tier from 300 to 500, but it looks like the numbers, the cost structure was shifted, and I don't know why, and I can't figure it out relative to this slide. Because that doesn't seem to be telling the whole story there. So I just wanted to dig in to at least around those first two tiers, because that's where most of our customers, that's the necessity of water right there. That's not filling swimming pools and watering acreage. That's why I'm interested in just those first two.
Yeah, and I think what we tried to do with staff on that was address that affordability issue by trying to keep that tier one, basically including more consumption within that lower rate. And that's where, it does get, and hopefully we can address some of these questions maybe in prior slides and clarify where maybe staff and HDR didn't hear correctly the approach that you were looking at for 3 or 3A. But there is that piece where the money does have to come from somewhere, and so I think we just maybe made an assumption that they were going to be a little bit different between 1 and 3 as far as that total, and it looks like you wanted maybe that revenue number to be the same between 1 and 3. And to make that up in the upper tiers.
Josiah, to be clear, if I wasn't clear a month or two ago, what I was not interested in is seeing the numbers be changed so that the outcome stays the same. So I don't know if there was a miss there. That's why. Thank you.
Counselor, the outcome in terms of revenue?
That's correct, like total sum revenue. And there's a little bit of a difference, but I was just, it's hard to compare one-to-one. I wanted to see what the differential would be relative to the tiers. What is the same cost structure, meaning charge per cubic feet, but if we charge that first tier for 500 instead of 300, and now it's not really apples to apples because the numbers are a little bit different on those first two tiers. That was just what was concerning to me.
Okay. Counselor Kaplan?
That's okay.
No? Okay. Okay, carry on.
So, this was, again, the cumulative rate adjustment. I'll roll through that unless we had questions on that one. Ending fund balance. So, again, the goal was to make these at the end of the period approximately the same. And so what you can see then is that alternative 2, again, that's really the only variation we see is that we use some fund balance a little bit sooner to help buy down those rates and the loss, slight loss of compounding that we get. And so that's really this slide. That's about the only thing. It's just to show that, again, we do have some flexibility within reserves, but that does come at the risk mitigation cost. So we do have a little bit less revenue in the bank there to address anything that would happen with, I would say the capital would be the risk. So tier cost by alternative. This, we were trying to compare each alternative and what the final cost was after the 5 years. So again, keeping the revenues constant, what do we have to do under each alternative to maintain and hit that same revenue number? And so you can see, some of the alternatives very similar, especially with tier 1. And then as we get into the other tiers, we start to see some divergence. And that's just based on, the alternative 1 and 3A, where we are targeting, encouraging that conservation ethos a little bit more. And so you can see we get up to 22 cents per CF in those by year 5 in tier 5, so that most expensive, and where, to put that towards, what we're looking at with the base case, we're closer to the 16 cents per CF.
So,
Councillor Kaplan?
yeah, thanks, Josiah. On this point, this is an interesting. I really appreciate this graph because it really shows a real change in philosophy. I guess in the shoulder season, the Tier 5 is only in the shoulder season. All right, that's not in the shoulder season. It's shoulder season plus all summer. So it's those highest users. The Tier 5 is over 3,600 cubic feet. And for those of us who think in terms of gallons instead of cubic feet, that's like 27,000 gallons of use in a month. So that's for people that are really doing a lot of watering of something. And I think that's, and they're, under this scenario, they're paying a higher price for that. Under the scenario alternative 1 and alternative 3A, they're paying a higher price for that. Versus the base case in alternative 2 and 3, it's higher, but it's not dramatically higher. So to me, this really reinforces a difference between the different alternatives. One really pushing towards curbing that excessive use and pushing for people or users to conserve in those summer months when we're most stressed.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, thank you. And I absolutely appreciate that comment from Councillor Kaplan. And I want to start by thanking, both you, Josiah and Scott, for putting in the work for this. I mean, you're bringing back really the meat, I think, of what we were looking for, which was some options. The only comment I'll make is that, there's no avoiding the scenario that I guess is the situation that the apartment complex that I live in and a lot of other multifamily complexes where you've got large meter sizes per building. And so individual renters in those units, they're not paying water. And the result's going to be, and there's also no way to really encourage or force people to conserve that water. And so you have high water usage, high bills. And though rent increases are capped in the state of Oregon, what I'm understanding is that rents are going to go up quite a bit. Deposits are going to go up quite a bit for new people moving into that. And that is counter to, I think, that what some of our goals are, certainly my goals of trying to encourage, we want more students, we want more young families and more affordability. The reality, though, is that we have a need to fill, right? We need to cover the costs of doing business, of running our water. We have a capital.
Do you have a question?
Oh, I thought we were going into comments. Sorry.
We weren't quite yet. Are you completed with your presentation?
I do have a few more.
Yeah, let's go ahead and finish those up.
So the residential bill comparison, again, we jumped to 2030, so the 5th year of this 5-year plan to try to create a fair look at what that bill would be. And so you can see then we are seeing under alternative 1 and 3A where we are expanding those tier differentials, that we do get some cost savings for, again, the about 70-ish% of customers would be in that category. That is my last one. I do have the detail of all the bill variable charges after, but Mayor, we can open it up for questions at this point.
Yes, so questions. Councillor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just scrolling through with the last resolution we had back in 2019. Scott, maybe you could just help me here. The tiers there, multifamily, as Councilor Bloom is alluding to, is it the same? And I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I am interested in, if you can go back one slide. I don't know, Josiah, who's running the deck here. Thank you. So is this, do you get to tier 5 really quickly on like the single meters for like a multifamily, and or is it split by unit? I guess what I'm trying to say is, and I'm doing a poor job of it, we'll just say apartment complexes kick into a higher tier because it's a single meter, or how does that work? I'm trying to figure out how to wrap my head around multifamily to single family, because I can do the math relative to a single meter. I'm worried about how like multi-apartment unit, each unit gets aggregated into a single meter, and how does that work?
So I know multifamily has the same commodity tier structure as a single family. And so that aligns with all the alternatives. So all 5 tiers for single family residential and multifamily are the same from a commodity basis. The difference generally is your meter size for the development. And I can't say for certain how those break down from development to development, because we have some that have a manifold of meters and each unit is individually metered. And then we have some that are off a central large meter that are dispersed out to each, from that meter to each unit or complex. And so I don't know how, maybe Councilor Bloom could talk to it, how, property owners divvy up that charge across the rental basis. But that's not something, that we have kind of the ability and foresight to figure out how to manipulate that from a rate structure standpoint. Yeah.
If I may just one quick question. Yeah, so it would be something like, if, I'll just say myself had thought about it, right? It didn't occur to me, to your point about having the actual size of the base, it's whatever it is, 2 inch, 3 inch, or whatever it is. So that plus whatever that commodity rate would be based on number of units or something like that would be kind of how you would try to get in the ballpark. Before I turn over to Counselor Fluke?
Yeah, I know, just from my history of being a renter in a common complex, you were just charged a flat rate, monthly. In my experience, historically, from the landlord, you just paid X amount of dollars, which probably got amortized in that total bill.
I just worry about that going up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, so I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the base rate in 5 years for residential bill. And looking at this will take effect in July the 1st of 2025, correct?
Staff would bring forward a rate resolution next month to increase rates commensurate with the preferred alternative that the council would like to see in the study to take effect July 1 of 2025. And then also a exhibit, it would be broken into 2 exhibits. One would be for July 1 of 2025 to June 30th. And then the second exhibit would be for July 1, 26 to June 30th of 27, to cover the 2 recommended years within the biennial for the rate structure.
And then I'm looking at the base cost. And so that means the base is, this is the amount that you pay just to have the water in your house?
That would, I believe that includes the 700 cubic foot of consumption, if that's the chart you're looking at.
If you're looking, it depends on which tier, is that correct? Tier 2
Yeah,
or
this
3 or?
slide. So that's the total water rate, including the meter charge, customer charge, commodity charge for 700 cubic foot. So that
If
breaks
it's
it down,
700.
starting in July 1 of 25 through 2030, June 30th, 2030. And those are allocated per the alternative. So if you look, basically alternative number 1, which as the shoulder months, represents each year the lower water bill overall for that 0 to 700 cubic foot consumption all the way through 2030 program. And so that was one of the reasons that staff kind of recommended this alternative as the preferred alternative, because it encompasses the shoulder months, as council wanted to see the analysis on, but also provides for the lower water bill for the majority, as Josiah said, almost 70% of the users fall within that 0 to 700 cubic foot charge basis.
Okay,
I will note that there's an error in the motion, it says base alternative, and but staff up above recommended alternative number 1, so if the council gets to it, the motion would be from staff that alternative number 1 would be the finalize the study, update the report, is that with that methodology and that alternative, and that will be the rate structure in the resolution that staff will bring forward in June.
Councillor Hanson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Josiah. My microphone working?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded.
So in the document, it says that we're looking to increase water rates 13.5%. And I was looking at the base rates on table E-S, which seems to be labeled number 5, but it's 9 in my packet. So I see a roughly 13.5% charge to all customers. I'm wondering, what is the percentage in alternative 1 for the water rates as a numeric percentage? So we've got our base rate, every customer is going to go up, but roughly in communicating to the public, your rates, the water rates are going up. Is it also 13.5%? So it's not. Could you help me out there?
So I don't know, Josiah, you can back me up, but I'll start. 13.5% is the revenue requirement. So that's the overall need of the fund. So if you make 8 million and you need 13.5% more in the revenue, so let's just use, we need $9 million now in the revenue. So that structure is created in both the meter charge, customer charge, and then the commodity charge to get you that extra revenue. And what we did, and what they did as part of the analysis, is try to recoup a little bit more of that revenue in the higher levels of the commodity charge itself, and kind of try to baseline as much as feasible the first 2 tiers of the commodity charge. So I don't know if, Josiah, you have a percentage, but it's not, a standard across the board. Everyone's going to see a 13.5% increase to their water bill, because it really is dependent on their usage.
Is there some kind of number that people can use to wrap their heads around? Because this is all, it's very apparent.
We don't have that specific number, I apologize, but I think it's pretty close to about 10% for that first year, because it'd be, a little over $5, and I think we're below that. I was trying to just do a quick math to see if I can replicate 5. Yeah, it's slightly under 10% for alternative 1 for 2026, and so that's the again, that in 3A, that would put more of the burden on higher water use customers, and that's where you'd see anything below 13.5%. To Scott's point, you would see customers would be making that up on the higher water use.
I think that helps.
And it's hard to show on a bill-to-bill basis, because last time we were making 1,000 cubic foot, and we revised that to 700 cubic foot, so we can't show you that.
We've moved the goalposts, right?
It's actually lower now on a monthly basis, but you're getting less water for that, cost, but you are still lower overall from a bill perspective, utilizing the fact that we anticipate 70+% of the users will be in that 700 to 800 cubic foot a month, usage paradigm.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, well, I guess I did want to follow up on Councillor Bloom's comment or question, really, about the multifamily. The way I've been thinking about this, and I'd just like to get a reality check from you all, I've been thinking about the higher usage really is correlated not so much to indoor use, but really outdoor use. So in order to reach those higher usage for single-family residents, or multifamily, you really need to have significant outdoor usage in order to hit those higher tiers. Am I thinking about that wrong?
No, I think, as you see from the peaking across the structure, you're peaking in the middle of summer, and that is all outdoor use addition. As you know, when you look at the wintertime usage, I mean, the city of Ashland is almost consistently baseline from indoor use of about 1.75 million gallons a day across the board all winter long. And then once the weather starts to increase, we start to see that peak hit, and then middle of summer, we do see it. And that would be outdoor use for multifamily and or single-family residential. Also, institutional commercial has some outdoor water use applied to it as well.
So if we go back a couple of slides to the one that's residential use by tier 1.
Can you go back a couple slides, Josiah, to the...
I'm sorry, I think the mic cut out. I didn't hear it. Which slide was it?
Go back to the residential use by tier 1. So I'm interpreting, that was it.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
I was interpreting that to mean that if in fact multifamily apartment buildings like the one that Councilor Bloom was talking about, were just normally using high levels because there's just more apartments on a single meter, you would see not tier 4, not tier 5, you would see tier 4, a lot of tier 4 during the January, February, March, April months as well, because that would be indoor use. So it's really only once you, it's really only
the
once,
overall, yeah, I see what you're saying.
it's really only once you add the outdoor use that you get to those levels, whether it's multifamily or whether it's single-family residence. Is that right?
Yeah, and then I would say, depending on the number of units, that's divided across the number
Sure.
of units, yeah.
Right. Okay. So really, we're talking to the higher use are really for folks, customers that use a lot of outdoor watering.
Correct.
Okay.
Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. And no, I don't know, because I don't know how to read a water meter, so I don't even know what the average is per building and where I live. And I think to tie it into a question is it possible to install multiple meters in one building, or is there a rule that you have to have just the one meter for the whole building?
So I know in some instances, they're sub-metered at locations. We have at the airport, there's a water meter that's sub-metered to multiple hangars. And that was a common billing thing. You get a total billing number, and then it's sub-metered, so it's allocated that way. So I know that is a possibility to have that. It's just up to who does that and puts it in and manages it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. So we are, any final questions? Councilor Kaplan?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, so the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Kaplan?
I move to accept the water cost of service study using alternative 1 for the preferred rate structure.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the work that that Josiah, you and your team and Scott have done on this. I appreciate which puts more of the burden of the rate increase on the upper tier consumption charges. I particularly like the alternative 1 because, in fact, unlike what we were seeing, when we first started looking at this water cost of service study, this has no increase whatsoever in the commodity charge for the first 300 cubic feet. That's those tier 1s. That's been in effect since 2019, and we would keep that same charge flat through this coming fiscal year until 2027. That's for the lowest use tier. It would be a 9% increase in 2026 for the tier 2, an 18% increase for a tier 3. So that's consistent, I think, with what we've been talking about in terms of our values of trying to really incentivize conservation. I think we need to increase water rates because costs have clearly gone up since the last time we raised our rates in 2019. And as we all know, we're about to embark on a large capital project that requires funding in order to protect our water system. Nobody likes to raise rates, obviously, because we haven't raised rates for our water, either the meter charge or the commodity rate since 2019. That's 6 years ago, while costs have gone up. But I think this new structure more fairly distributes the burden in a progressive way by household consumption. So I'm going to support this. Well, I made the motion, so I guess I'd support it.
Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you bringing this analysis back for another look with some deeper dive. And we have an incredible water source here in the city of Ashland, and I'm biased, but I think it's the best tasting water in the world. And I know it's not the least expensive water in our valley, but it's still relatively inexpensive, and I like the rate structure and how equitable it is. And I look forward to sharing our neighbors' water with our neighbors and actually selling excess water here in the future. So I support this, and I, nobody likes a fee increase, but looking at our budgetary needs, it's something we have to do in order to keep the water flowing, and it does. I'm so grateful every day. I wake up in the morning and it's always there. So thank you very much, staff and Public Works, and I support this. Thank you.
Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you both for your work on this. I think I love water more than anybody. Sorry about that, Eric, but I think I can trump you. Oops, did I say? But I appreciate water, and especially our water here in Ashland. Something that was mentioned by my colleague, Councilor Kaplan, is that with this rate, I understand our water rates have not gone up in 6 years, and I understand things do have to go up. And the residents of Ashland voted for this, and I support what the residents of Ashland want. However, I do think that this is going to impact our ratepayers, something that was brought up, that this too is going to add, because we are looking at the CIP, the major project of the water treatment plant, the ratepayers will be impacted with carrying that. So for me, I look forward to looking at other options in ways that we can take this cost off of a percentage of it off of the ratepayers. Because when you combine all of the costs that we are looking at July the 1st, it can impact your families. And what was mentioned earlier is we want families, we want young people. And when we compound all these taxes and fees, it makes it very difficult. So I look forward to looking at other alternative options to pay for this and get the water treatment plant built, but not necessarily 100% of the cost being on our ratepayers. Thank you.
Councilor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I want to say a couple things. First off, I wasn't necessarily prepared to make for a motion yet, so that's okay. I completely agree with my colleagues, Councilor Kaplan, Councilor Hanson, and of course Councilor Duquesne too, about we're here. There is a cost that goes up. We have to do something. The issue that I have with this particular alternative and the math that I've been doing is that I'm specifically curious as to, or I'm concerned with the first two tiers, because that again is where the bulk of our users use water, and that's the affordability range that I'm interested in. The difference, according to my numbers here, between alternative 1 and alternative 3, alternative 3A, and it's in the lower two tiers over the 2025 base rate or base year to 2030 is a net less 10%. For year 1 between 2026 and 2025 is a net decrease, or is a net lower 12% than alternative 1 and 11% lower in year 2. So as much as I will certainly support water rates increase and moving forward with this. I cannot support this particular alternative because of the numbers that I have in front of me. If the council so chooses, and depending on how this motion goes, I will be willing to make a motion for another alternative. Thank you.
Councilor Bloom.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't stress enough how much I appreciate you all putting in this extra work and bringing this back to us. And I think that these alternatives, especially alternative 1, 3, and 3A, kind of go to achieve what I think we were all hoping to do, and that's to lessen the impact on lower income people, families, and that does that. It is not lost on me. We need to increase rates. We need to achieve these goals. I do agree with Councilor Duquesne that I'm certainly interested in looking at other ways that we could offset and maybe come back at a later date and lower these rates by using a different means to help fund the water treatment plant or offset that cost. That said, to Councilor Dale's point, I was hoping and was thinking that it was likely going to be a motion for 3A, and that is something I can absolutely get behind. And seeing that there is a possibility that might happen, given Councilor Dale's comments, I won't be supporting this motion, and I would be looking for a follow-up motion for 3A.
Okay, if there are no other discussion, roll call. Oh, Councilor Kaplan?
I'd like to ask Councilor Dale to explain his calculations, because it doesn't look like to me the Councilor 3A is an improvement over alternative 1. Looks to me like the rates are actually higher on the first 1,000. Yes, yeah, well, it's just higher on 3A. So I don't quite understand where you're coming from, and alternative 3A implies an increase in the rates in fiscal 26 that level that alternative 1 doesn't. So I just don't understand your analysis.
Mayor, if I may.
Councilor Dale.
Yeah, so what I did, Councilor Kaplan, is I just punched in the figures off of the chart, and I just used a figure of 750 cubic feet per minute, or per month.
750 or 700?
750 is what I did. So I basically.
Why 750?
Because an average single-family household, family of 4, is about 800 or so. That's what I use. So I figured if per month we were going to use an average, I used my own water bill to find out what I was outside and others, and it was just that average. I mean, about 750 average is what I use just specifically, because as you noted, there's certainly an additional usage in the summer months for irrigation, for outdoor, for swimming pools. What I am interested in is the base level of water that it takes for a family, for an individual, for the necessities, the sanitation, the cooking, all of those things. That is, as we noted, in tier 1 across all of the months is that's what I'm interested in. If someone were not watering their lawn, if someone were not filling a swimming pool, if someone were not using irrigation, what does it take for a family to use the base level of water necessary? And I would try to make that as cost effective as possible. That's what I was looking at, and that's why I used 750 cubic feet per minute as a baseline per month. So what I did was I said, okay, the first 300 would be for instance, as our base rate would be 0.028. And then the remaining 450 cubic feet per month would be at a rate of 0.0348. So I summed those together. And as an example, the commodity rate, if we were to do it this month in 2025, would be $24.06. That would be the commodity rate if I used 750 cubic feet per minute.
That's at current rates?
That's at my current rate, yep. And alternative 3A, it's the same. It would be, let's see here. So what I did with alternative 3A is if I use 0.028 for 500 cubic feet before I went to another 250, that reduces my monthly bill. Same cost, but different tier. It's now $22.70 as opposed to $24.06. So I didn't want to get a math, Mayor. I'm sorry, but.
Well, we do have a motion on the table.
Sure. Okay. Yep.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne?
No.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Bloom?
No.
Dale?
No.
Hanson?
Yes.
Floor is open for an alternate motion. Counselor Dale?
Thank you. I move to accept the water cost of studies, service study utilizing the rate structure alternative 3A.
Second.
Counselor Dale?
I think the math is there. But
Counselor Bloom?
Yeah, math makes sense, and a big part of it for me too, is I appreciated what was in alternative 3 about increasing from 300 to 500 cubic feet. I think that can be beneficial for a lot of families.
Counselor Kaplan?
Yes, I don't think the math is there. I think, Councillor Dale, you've made a mistake, and I think your analysis is somewhat superficial. So I will be voting against this motion.
Any further discussion? Counselor Hanson?
I was looking at both 1 and 3A, so this is still in my comfort zone, and I don't quite follow, but that's okay. I'm not really good at back of napkin math, even in a spreadsheet, hearing it. So I would love to check that out over coffee sometime, Councilor Dale. I appreciate your work on that, but I'm also comfortable with 3A, so I will be supporting this.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Dale,
yes.
Kaplan,
No.
Bloom,
Yes.
Duquesne.
No.
So thank you very much, Scott, and thank you, Josiah. We appreciate the good work, and we know that this has been very complicated as we've made our way through, and appreciate all of your help. We are now to a resolution adopting a parks fee for the biennium of 25 to 27. I will remind councilors that it is 9 o'clock. We have this and one more item if we are able to get to it this evening, and just keep that in mind as we move through this process.
All right, good evening. So at the joint APRC and council meeting on May 7th, we were given direction to bring a parks fee resolution back to council. So we have done that this evening for a $5 fee on all electric meters, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I believe there was a part of that discussion was that there was some interest in the council in terms of limiting the time to 24 months, and then but there wasn't enough support to have it be a direct, to be specific direction, and so we said that we would have that discussion here as part of this process. That we would take it back. We didn't have everyone present that evening. So we are, that's one of the conversations I think that it would be useful for us to simply discuss, maybe to go around if people are prepared to do that and indicate where they are with that. If we have any questions of staff, okay. So let's go ahead and have our two speakers come up before we have anyone make comments about where they are headed with this. We have two people who have signed up to speak. One is Spencer Goddard, and the other one is Ed Finkley. So Spencer and Ed, if you would please come up to this microphone. You'll have 3 minutes. The machine will give you a signal when you have 20 seconds left, and please finish your sentence when you hear the final chimes. Please tell us your name and the city in which you reside when you start. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Spencer Goddard. I reside just outside of Ashland, but I do consider myself to be an Ashland resident. Been here for over 20 years. I currently work for Ashland Parks and Rec. I've been here for 13. And before you guys take a vote on this is a pretty important measure for not just me, but for everybody in this room. You're talking about whether or not you need to fund this parks department properly, not just $5. $5 is when you guys are quibbling over nickels and dimes. It's kind of disheartening because you have a whole staff of people out here who pour their hearts and their souls into this place. And they've been doing it forever. And every year we just hope, for God, wouldn't it be nice if we could just get the staff we need to take care of this place. And it hasn't happened. So to hear you guys asking for the public to pay for more, but to still receive the same amount of services is lame. That's not right. And I also just wanted to say that before every meeting, you guys do a land acknowledgement. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. I'm proud to be in a city that does this. And one thing in here that it says is is that we honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on. Those lands have been passed on to me and the staff. We need help to be able to steward these lands. So while I know you guys are all geared up to vote for this $5 fee in the future, as you look forward, because this is kind of on shaky ground, please look for a secure funding source for the Parks Department. Because we have one hell of a park over there, Libya Park. It's world famous. It's not just a walk through Garfield. It's not just a walk through Hunter Park. It's Libya Park. It's been here for over 100 years. And there's been dozens of people before me to take care of that park, and it's been tasking me to do it now. I'm asking you, please find a secure funding source for this place. It needs it. We all need it.
Thank you.
Mayor, councilors, my name is Ed Finkley. I'm an Ashland resident, and I'm here tonight to support the $5 per month park fee for 2 years. I see the fee as a stopgap measure needed now to properly operate and maintain all the existing facilities run by Ashland Parks and Recreation. I am both an ice skater and a member of the Rotary Club of Ashland, so the proposed closure of the ice rink hit home. The rink is called the Ashland Rotary Centennial Ice Rink due to investments the club made about 20 years ago. And a private gift of over $100,000 got the rink started in 1996. The ice rink is one of the many success stories of private-public partnerships in Ashland over the years. The rink had 20,907 admissions last season. It is used especially by young people. And to me, Ashland can't say that it wants more children while at the same time shutting down recreational facilities that are heavily used by children. It would be sad to me if Ashland couldn't find the money to maintain all the recreational assets we have, especially those developed through private-public partnerships, like the Daniel Meyer Pool and the Rotary Ice Rink, and for that matter, the Libya Park itself. Tonight, I support a $5 fee on electric bills, only because there doesn't seem to be another responsible way to move forward right now. A longer-term fix probably lies within getting voters to approve the permanent extension of the restaurant tax and specifying that those tax revenues that are allocated to Parks and Rec can be spent on operation and maintenance, not just capital investments. Our community has, in essence, inherited parklands and recreational facilities that generations before us invested in over and over through specific, successful public-private partnerships. Our challenge as a community in 2025 and beyond is to maintain those public lands and recreational facilities, starting with Libya Park and building out from there. In my view, the collective commitment should be to keep existing facilities and properly maintain our parklands. I believe you will find strong community support for that outcome. To me, the $5 fee is 2 years is a necessary first step.
Thank you. So, councilors, as we move into this next part of the discussion, just a reminder that in response to the direction to staff at the joint study session, the budget that has come from the budget committee, the budget recommendation, includes this $5 fee, and it's been integrated into that budget. So we should keep that in mind as we have this conversation. What I would like to do is to go around and hear from each counselor where you are in terms of the potential of limiting this for a 2-year time period or a different time period, or whether you are interested in not having any limits on it at all. So whoever would like to start, Councilor Bloom?
Thank you. I appreciate opportunity to go first, considering that I wasn't able to be there at the joint session, but I was watching from home. When this whole conversation began, there was a couple of things that were very important to me, and that was transparency and accountability for this process. After watching the Parks meeting, conversations with Parks commissioners, and how this has all transpired, I feel confident that we now have a process to move forward to have conversations about a dedicated funding source for parks, to be able to do some of the amazing things and amazing ideas that our Parks Commission, Parks Director, Councilor Hanson talks about, things that I would love to see myself. But we have to be deliberate about how we go about doing that. We have to have community involvement, and we have to be creative in the solutions to get to that point. For me, I won't be able to support this if there is not a 2-year sunset. And the reason for that is that I think that it is important to hold ourselves accountable, to hold the commission accountable, to say that there is an insurance policy, that we have to do this work. We cannot be lazy. We cannot say, that's a hard conversation, and so let's just let this $5 fee keep going and not actually solve the problem of how we continue to fund parks in a sustainable, long-term way to do the kind of projects that I think we would all love to see in this community. And so if there is a 2-year sunset date on this, I will happily support this $5 fee.
Councilor Hanson?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the testimony tonight. When this revenue item came to the agenda, it surprised a lot of us, right? And I'd say the majority of Ashlanders love their parks extremely, and our community is known for it. Certainly, it's a reason I think I stayed here, and the reason many people came here and have stayed here. And certainly, it's an economic driver. It's an equity balancer. It's so many things to us, and we are looking for more dollars in an expensively increasing world. So how do we reconcile these things? When Parks Commission first brought back a fee that was higher, and then sharpened their pencils and came back with a lower fee, we looked at 18 months at one cost and then lowered it to spread it out over 24 months. I said it before awkwardly, and it was reported kind of weird in the sense that I don't want to lie to my constituents. I really do think that this parks fee is a part of our future forever because of our escalating costs. Now, I'd love to be proved wrong there. So I can support a 2-year cap, but I too want a dedicated revenue source, and I don't think we're going to get away from this. But that being said, there was a lot of collaboration here, and I'm going to go with this $5 fee, and I think that it should be in perpetuity. However, I don't want to let perfect get in the way of progress, so I will support this fee to buy us some time, because I too think that we can be creative. Maybe we can go back to food and beverage with another vote. Maybe let's keep workshopping it. But I do support this now, and I really I'm grateful that this council, along with the commissioners and the Citizen Budget Committee, got this far, and we're not going to be reducing hours at the splash pad, that we're not going to close the rink, that we're gonna keep going forward. And I believe those aspirational goals of a larger system with some more resources is doable. And I also think we're gonna have tough conversations about dialing, services in other directions. But we have 2 years if we pass this, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Councilor Dale?
I have no discussion, but happy to make a motion if the body's ready.
Pardon me, we're not quite yet ready yet.
Okay, nope, then I'll save it.
But did you have a
I'll
thought?
comment during the motion.
Okay.
But I would say I'm in alignment.
Okay. Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. For the sake of time, I will be short. I appreciate my colleagues bringing this back to 2 years because I think it should have a time to sunset. I believe that this is a conversation that will be taking more time in the future. I agree with Councilor Hanson. However, I am of the belief that we need to, what was mentioned before, sharpen pencils. That's what we need to do. We need to sharpen pencils and manage our money better. I appreciate parks and open spaces, and I want our children to have fun and play. However, if we don't start to manage better and live within our means, this is just, we'll be going down the rabbit hole. So I do not support the $5. However, I do believe it will be going in that direction. It is already $5, but I don't support this.
Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think I'll join my colleagues. I said last time I support a dedicated funding source for parks, and I think that this makes sense. I would prefer to give more time for this to be in perpetuity, but I'll go with the body in sunsetting this after 2 years. I think there's some things that we can do. I think there's not, we may not have as much success as some of my colleagues think that we can have in 2 years, and then we'll be back at this again trying to decide whether to extend it for another 2 years or have some drastic cuts. But I will support it at this point. I think it's a necessary step.
Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale.
Thank you. I move to approve Resolution 2025-13, approving a parks fee of $5 per electric meter to take effect on July 1st, 2025, until June 30th, 2027, after which it will automatically expire unless renewed by the council.
Second.
Councilor Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all of the comments of my colleagues, and I'm just going to take kind of a philosophical opposite approach. The very idea of a dedicated, sustainable funding source as we know it is gone. Our public safety, our chief of police doesn't have a dedicated police department. Our fire department, our city manager has worked for a better part of a year trying to figure out a dedicated funding source. I mean, that idea historically is gone. And so I'm really actually looking forward to the innovative new ideas that we come up with to figure out what replaces that. We had what I think was a wonderfully productive joint session with the Parks Commission a couple weeks ago. I appreciate the Parks Director coming in, and he was asked, does this $5 get you through until you get to your pros plan? And he said yes, and I believe him, and there's a trust there that I think this 2 years is actually kind of a moot point because we're going to be having some wonderful discussions in 6 months about what this looks like. And we talked about market rate. We talked about level of services. What does the community want? The discussions. This is the position we found ourselves in short term. But I really think this discussion is going to be positive and productive in much shorter order than 2 years. To Councilor Bloom's point, that it's just an insurance policy. Other than that, I look forward to the value that Parks is going to provide moving forward.
Councilor Bloom?
Yeah, thank you. I share those sentiments. And I mean, I think that the important thing is that we have these conversations and that we have the time to have those conversations. I think where a lot of my frustration is that there was this kind of shot clock and it felt like we had to get it. And it was like, something just didn't feel right. And this gives us the opportunity, not only for us and the commission to have the conversation, but to maybe get some really cool creative ideas from the community of things that we have not even thought of that we could do with our parks and as it relates to funding. And so I appreciate that there's a willingness to do the 24 months, the 2 years. It makes me a lot more comfortable with all of this. And I'm really excited to have these conversations because let's be honest, parks is the fun thing in Ashland, right? I mean, we just talked about raising water rates. That's not fun. Talking about cool stuff in our parks, that's kind of fun. So I look forward to that. And yeah, thank you for the motion.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
No.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. And I also just wanted to say thank you to staff, to the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission, to our Parks Director. There has been a lot of work trying to figure out how to create the space to do the work that we have all been talking about up here. And I'm glad to see that we've gotten to a place where we have that container to do the work. We have one last agenda item that we added earlier today, and it is the Guanajuato Hearts. So if Cassie Preskenis, the chair of our Public Arts Advisory Committee, will come up. And I would just like to preface this with letting the council know that I have been in conversations with the mayor of Guanajuato. We have been discussing a recommitment ceremony this year. And I will be traveling to Guanajuato with a contingent this year. She will be coming up this year as well. And so this conversation and this proposal are in light of this particular year. It's not common for both mayors to be traveling in the same year. And so there is an attempt to take advantage of the recommitment ceremony and those events that are already in motion. So with that, Councilor Duquesne, did you want to say anything, or shall we hand it over to Cassie?
Let's hand it over to Cassie for the sake of time.
Great.
There we go. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you, Mayor, for those comments and for prefacing this presentation with that. I'm going to try to be brief. I think you have some information. Did it get into the packet today, the hearts? No. Okay.
But it was sent out.
It was sent out. Okay, fantastic. So the reason that this has come forth in addition to this celebration that's happening this year is because, as you probably know, SOU and the University of Guanajuato also have a very close partnership. So this was brought forth by the university, actually representatives from SOU. This is an artist who was supported in their business plan through SOU's School of Business and some students at SOU. And there are these hearts around the city of Guanajuato. This artist has offered to make these hearts for us at no cost. There's a small cost for the paint and a little bit of the materials, but most of the materials are also being donated. So the reason this has come to you this way is because we did not put out a call for this art through the Public Arts Advisory Committee. Typically, we would have to put out an RFQ or an RFP for this kind of for us to pay for something, for us to request for you all to approve funds for this type of installation. So because there's a small fee associated with this is the type of installation that would typically come to you as a gift to the city. So we would be looking to the city council to approve the acquisition of this art. So that's why it's coming this way, which is a little bit odd. And also it's time sensitive because we're talking about an unveiling on the 4th of July when the mayor of Guanajuato is here. And this would be at SOU. So what they're proposing is that we acquire 2 hearts from this artist at the cost of $600 for the hearts themselves. They're fairly large, as I think you can see in the photos. They would be awesome for photo ops. The first site that has already been approved through SOU would be at Churchill Lawn at Siskiyou Boulevard. So it would be like incoming SOU students and prospective families looking at the university. This awesome, beautiful heart, it's like the first thing they see. It invokes that Sister City Guanajuato vibe that really could attract some new students. The second heart we don't have the official location of, but the idea that's been sort of floated is possibly Garfield Park, which is sort of south end of Ashland near student housing. We would look at doing that in collaboration with the Parks and Rec Commission. So there would be a bit more process there. So we're not looking at that installation right away. It would just be the Churchill Lawn installation for 4th of July. So just to quickly kind of go through the budget request, it would be $600 for the 2 hearts. They approximated $2,000 for the shipping. And then there was a request for $1,000 to be allocated for the airplane ticket to actually fly the artist here for the unveiling. Additionally, there was an initial $400 for housing the artist, but we think we have a local hotel that's offered to house them for free. And then there was also a marketing budget line, but we're hoping to work with Travel Ashland and maybe the Chamber and some of our other local press to do that marketing for free. The last thing that we would be requesting is the installation that would be in partnership with Public Works. There would be a small amount of concrete that would need to be poured, and I don't have an exact amount for you for that one. But if you add up the $600 for the paint, the $2,000 with the $1,000 for the airline ticket, and then, so that would be $3,600. And then possibly an additional, I'm gonna throw $1,000 towards you for the concrete and the installation, but that would be something that the city would have to figure out how much it would cost. So that's the request in front of you. Again, the reason for this would be to really celebrate our sister city relationship with Guanajuato and our two universities, especially right now in this political climate. You know, we are a sanctuary city, and this feels like a really beautiful opportunity for our city to capitalize on this moment and this gift that's before us. So I would recommend that you consider approving and accepting this acquisition.
Great, thank you.
We put a motion.
So I have a question to Sabrina. With this allocation, where would that come from? I know we have TLT funding for public art, but I don't know where that is in terms of its current fiscal budget.
So, you know, this depends, we're like right between fiscal years.
Right.
So it needs to come out of the public art budget. It just depends on what fiscal year it's going to happen. And that includes the concrete and everything, because now public art has kind of acquisition funds as well as maintenance funds in their budget.
So if the council were to go forward with this evening, it would just be a matter of how to distribute that expense across potentially these two fiscal
I think it just depends
budgets.
on the timing of when the funds need to be expended.
Okay, so you don't see necessarily a problem from a budgetary standpoint. Okay. Questions? Yes, Councilor
Yes, just a
Dale.
question. Yes, thank you. So Sabrina, real quick, relative to timeliness and the mechanics, if individuals or organizations were willing to donate to this, how would they go about that, and when would they need to get it by? Or could it just backfill the public arts fund somehow?
I mean, ideally, the money would never come to us, and they would just pay for the artist or pay for the materials, and the city would not have to accept donations. We typically do not do that. So if there is a way to do that, that would be ideal.
Okay.
We don't have a method to really, we're not a foundation, we don't accept donations.
Understood, thank you. Then if I may, where would we direct donations to?
The chamber has a foundation.
Okay,
That would probably be easy.
thank you.
So
I would also maybe recommend, instead of Garfield, we think about perhaps a median on the south side where the art could go.
You know, we have the idea that if we get these first two hearts, maybe this is something that continues throughout the city, that maybe we end up installing a lot more hearts over time all around town, similar to what Guanajuato does. But these are the first two hearts. And this does seem like a real draw for tourism as an opportunity for the city, especially if we continue to expand on this project.
Well, and my understanding is that we're looking at this first one, we know where it's going to be installed, and then the Public Arts Commission and working with Parks and Recreation Commission would come forward with a recommendation for where to put the other one.
That's exactly.
And we know that this council has requested more public art on the south side of Ashland. So, so if there are no more questions, Councilor Duquesne, if you'd like to make a motion.
Yes, I move to approve the $4,600. Thank you. Thanks. I move to approve the $4,600 for the gift and the art of the two Guanajuato hearts. $4,600.
One of you
wanted it. Second.
Okay.
Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you. Cassie, I knew that you would be the best person to come and talk about these two beautiful pieces of art. And I just want to say, when I sent this out to my colleagues, I think I said $5,000 or something, and Cassie and Public Arts have worked very diligently to get the cost down. And Ashland always shows up. We always show up for each other, and to have one of the owners of the hotel just be in the room and say, hey, the artist can stay with me, and people are like, hey, I'll feed the guy. So I love how we show up for each other. I think this will be a benefit. It will show that we are welcoming and inclusive in who we are. So I am very happy that this is on the table and very happy to support it, having the support of our mayor. And I look forward to the mayor of Guanajuato being here and seeing the joy on her face and everyone else. So thank you.
Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting this to us. And I think that this is very symbolic of the best of Ashland and the Ashland that, well, we grew up experiencing, where we kind of come together and these ideas pop up and everybody then scrambles and how do we figure this out and get it forward to have some action on it. And so thank you, and I so look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I'm also
Councilor
very.
Kaplan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm also very excited about this this prospect. I first heard about it just on the street last Friday, kind of by accident almost, and thought it was a wonderful idea. So I really thank you for making it happen. Really exciting opportunity.
Councilor Dale.
Yeah, likewise, and thank you, Councilor DeCane, for this, and Cassie, really appreciate this. This is wonderful.
Councilor Hanson.
Likewise, supported 100%. Thank you.
Great. And I will be so excited if the council moves forward with accepting these two hearts. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
And as we close out this evening, we've had a difficult time in these chambers this evening. And I am heartened by the fact that we are closing with the conversation we just had and that the council just made the decision it did. And I didn't even mean that pun. So thank you all for the good work this evening. Thank you to staff. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.